Did the kid know? If he knew, then that innocent face was a front. This wasn't a gift of bourbon. It was a power move. Was he trying to send a message? Of course, Leo had no idea. He was just a little smarter than he used to be. Though the tickle in his palm from Stella's fingers was making him antsy, and fooling around in front of her parents felt a little too thrilling, he managed to keep his blood from rushing to all the wrong places. Still, he could sense a strange shift in the room's atmosphere. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something was definitely off. Stella squeezed his hand and stood up. Mom, Dad, I'm going to show Leo around upstairs. And just like that, Leo was pulled away. He had no idea if it was rude to leave so abruptly, but his uncle's advice echoed in his mind. When you're at your girlfriend's house, just do what she says. The moment they were out of her parents' sight, a wave of relief washed over him. The pressure was intense. Richard Vance and his wife, Victoria, could only watch as their daughter led the boy upstairs. Judging by their interaction, it was clear who was in the driver's seat. The second they were gone, Victoria couldn't hold it in any longer. A series of delighted laughs escaped her. Richard's expression darkened even further. Using my own stuff to give me a gift, with a middleman taking a cut. For him to give me this one bottle of bourbon, I lost 6. He wanted to explode, but there was nowhere to direct his anger. The kid had clearly put serious thought into his housewarming gifts. Every single one was presentable. He'd balanced them perfectly, some expensive, some inexpensive. The cheaper items weren't just random things picked up on the street. There were things the boy had made himself, a true show of sincerity. The cardinal sin of gift-giving was going too cheap, but going too expensive was also a mistake. A flood of pricey gifts could make the recipient think you were either asking for something or just showing off. This combination was perfect, valuable, yet heartfelt. If only that bourbon hadn't been from his own private stash. Seeing her husband's thunderous expression, Victoria managed to stifle her laughter and offer some consolation. Look at it this way, she said. The bourbon went on a little trip and came right back. So you lost 5 bottles, but you gained some goodwill. Richard stared at her. Is she trying to comfort me? No, she's definitely mocking me. And to think, the clothes the kid was wearing today were also a gift from his daughter. Don't ask how he knew. He'd seen the order for custom menswear and assumed it was for him. He'd asked about it, waited, and received nothing. He thought maybe it was just taking a long time, but then his assistant informed him it was a rush order that had already been completed and shipped. It had nothing to do with him. His daughter had commissioned it for her boyfriend. His wife was even more over the top. She'd spent a fortune on a portrait of the kid, then went to his art exhibition and spent another fortune on a painting by the kid, a painting of their daughter, no less. But did the money get spent? Yes. I'm not angry, Richard grumbled. I just think that next time this kid wants to give me a gift, he should just tell me directly. I'll prepare it for him. Cut out the middleman. Victoria burst out laughing again, unable to help herself. Upstairs, Leo heard the faint sound of laughter from the living room. Your parents seem to have a great relationship, he remarked. The family atmosphere was genuinely nice, which probably explained why Stella, despite her intimidating exterior, was actually a very kind person. Stella just stared at him. She'd been struggling not to laugh herself. Worried she'd break down right there and utterly humiliate her father, she'd used the tour as an excuse to drag Leo away. First time my boyfriend brings a gift for my dad. Good news, it's my dad's favorite. Bad news, it's literally my dad's. It was like one of those fruitcakes that gets re-gifted around the neighborhood and eventually finds its way back to you, only 100 times more awkward. Seeing the fresh dirt still clinging to the bottle, Stella had a sinking suspicion. Her dad must have dug it up from the cellar last night. It was possible. Leo had only told them he was coming yesterday. Suddenly, she felt a pang of sympathy for her father. This was truly embarrassing. Stella led Leo up to the 2nd floor and to her bedroom. The thought occurred to Leo, too. He remembered how, back in elementary school, girls would invite him over to play, but he'd always been too cool for it, finding them weepy and annoying. Back then, Leo had been a remarkably good-looking kid. Pale skin, fine features, and a normal height, standing out among the rowdy boys. It wasn't until the end of middle school that the height difference became obvious. He came back from summer break to find a bunch of his classmates had shot up like weeds, leaving him feeling short. The Foster family had good genes. His Uncle Clay was a suave, handsome man who'd been pursued by his boss's daughter. His own father, Ray, was a strapping man with a booming voice who had won the heart of the prettiest girl in the factory, his mother. Leo's foundation was solid. He'd been a beautiful child, but the hardship of his parents getting laid off had somehow made him grow into someone more ordinary. Now that he had become handsome again, his parents probably weren't too surprised. To them, he was just growing back into himself. As a kid, he'd had chances to visit his female classmates' houses, but never took them. By the time he was old enough to understand, the opportunities were gone. Today, he was actually going into his girlfriend's bedroom. A little thrill shot through him. He stepped onto a soft, thick carpet, the kind you could just lie down and roll around on. The room was large, not ridiculously so, but the high ceilings of the villa gave it a grand sense of space. Instead of a bed, the first thing he saw was a study area. There was a bookshelf filled with books, but it looked more like a reading nook than a place for serious work. A single armchair and a soft tatama mat sat near a small coffee table adorned with a vase of unknown fresh flowers. There was no piano. Clearly, that wasn't Stella's thing. Another wall was decorated with trinkets from around the world. I bring back one little thing from every country I visit, Stella explained. This was a small sitting area just outside her main bedroom, a place for her collections. Let me show you my walk-in closet. Leo's mind instantly jumped. What color is her underwear? He couldn't help it. A guy in his early 20s was naturally curious about these things. Did she coordinate her bra and panties every day? But when they entered the closet, he didn't see any underwear. It was probably tucked away in a drawer. The clothes were hung meticulously, likely organized by color and material. But what truly surprised him wasn't the clothes. The walk-in closet was even bigger than the reading nook, so large that it housed a motorcycle, the first one she learned to ride, and a collection of skateboards. One wall was covered with photos of her, including a mid-air shot of her on a skateboard, suspended so high that a fall wouldn't just hurt, it would be a one-way ticket to the afterlife. When two people are in the throes of new love, alone in a room with no cameras, things tend to happen. As his hand naturally found and unfastened the clasp at her back, Leo wanted to smack his own right hand. How could it move so smoothly? It was too slick. He hadn't meant to. There were places she had that he didn't, and he couldn't help but be curious. Luckily, a glance at the mirrored walls all around them brought him back to his senses. This was his first time visiting his girlfriend's house. He needed to take it easy. The thought of Mr. and Mrs. Vance downstairs was a powerful deterrent. Too risky. Leo quickly helped Stella straighten her clothes, refastening the clasp. He even adjusted things for her. He'd heard that women often had to resettle everything after putting on a bra, so he followed suit. His efforts earned him a sharp bite on the shoulder. Don't bite, don't bite. Not now. Next time, he pleaded, mostly afraid of getting hit. It wouldn't look good if he went downstairs after a tour, with his girlfriend's clothes all wrinkled. Or worse, if she had to change into a completely different outfit. Stella just punched him lightly on the arm. After that, the tour proceeded with decorum. He did lie down on her bed for a moment, rolling around on the fragrant sheets. That had to be something every boyfriend wanted to do, right? The view from the bed was beautiful. Stella's room wasn't some pink-drenched princess palace. It was clean, tidy, and filled with a pleasant, natural-smelling aroma. As he rolled over, he noticed a small, colorful ceramic figurine on the nightstand, protected by a transparent cover. Its thick, elevated base was carved from a solid block of agarwood. The scent he'd been smelling wasn't laundry detergent. It was the agarwood, a blend of floral and medicinal notes that felt incredibly calming. Lying there in his girlfriend's bedroom, a place he'd never been, he was surprised to find traces of himself everywhere. The gifts he'd given her, both expensive and cheap, were all carefully kept. It felt like he was a part of her life even when he wasn't there, and it made him happy. Even the little trinkets he'd given her that were practically worthless were hanging from her expensive designer bags. She didn't care about the price, because she didn't have to. They stayed for a little while longer. Although Leo wanted to lounge on that bed forever, it was the perfect firmness for her. Things. He knew they couldn't just hide out in her room all day. So he got up, and Stella led him to see Victoria's art studio. Upon entering, the first thing he saw was his own face staring back at him from a large canvas. A blush crept up his neck. It was still a little embarrassing, but seeing his portrait displayed next to one of Stella, he felt a deep sense of rightness. Regardless of their real-world status, in this studio, they stood side by side. Leo took a closer look around. Victoria's studio didn't have many paintings by domestic artists. Most were from renowned foreign painters. It made sense. The art world's aesthetic standards were dominated by Western capital. For the last century, art students had started by sketching Western sculptures, ingraining the ideal of high-bridged noses, deep-set eyes, sharp jawlines, and tall, fair figures into the collective consciousness. It had shaped the modern standard of beauty. Only when a nation is strong and confident can its people truly believe in their own beauty. Besides, foreign masterpieces were more valuable, a better return on investment. Currently, the most famous living artist in the country was Leo's own professor, Dr. Croft. But even her fame had exploded domestically only after she won awards abroad and found a market overseas. causing her prices to skyrocket. He admired the paintings, a truly refined experience. With his foundational knowledge of portraiture, he was deeply interested in the different styles. As he carefully examined the original works, he felt his own skills improving. Visiting museums as a child was about having an aesthetic forced upon you, but to see them now, as a decent artist in his own right, was a completely different feeling. He spotted one of Dr. Croft's early works, her style already strikingly evident. It was beautiful. Stella said he could take pictures, so he snapped a photo and sent it to Dr. Croft. When Dr. Croft saw the picture, she thought, well, he's made his way into the inner sanctum. My student is about to become my patron's son-in-law. How are we going to navigate that relationship? We'll just have to keep our own connections separate. Dr. Croft replied with a single image, a picture of artisanal spicy beef jerky. After the studio tour, it was nearly time for dinner. There were other rooms, like a tea room, that could be visited after the meal. When they got to the dining room, the bourbon remained unopened. Leo explained that he wasn't much of a drinker and that the first time he drank with Stella, he'd gotten drunk. He trailed off, realizing he shouldn't elaborate on that story. Feeling a bit nervous, he fumbled his words and quickly sat down. Thankfully, it was a normal dining table with a lazy Susan, not one of those comically long tables where you needed a runner to pass the salt. The meal was lavish. The dishes were far more upscale than anything at his own private kitchen, made with incredibly expensive ingredients. Rarity dictates value. Whether it tasted good or not, the effort they put into his first visit showed they took it seriously. To Leo, the food tasted fine. His palate had become quite discerning lately. Some of the dishes, he felt, weren't even as good as Chef Wu's. He took 1 or 2 bites of steamed fish and then left it alone. Stella did the same. The fish was an incredibly expensive variety, costing over $500 a pound. Due to environmental and human factors, many once common fish were now protected species. If you search for them online, you just get a green pop-up about conservation, with no price listed. Sometimes the most expensive fish isn't the tastiest. Its price comes from its scarcity. People ate them into near extinction, and now they're a luxury. But Leo's steamed fish was a masterpiece, and he rarely ate the dish when he was out anymore. The difference was just too vast. It was hard to explain, but you knew it when you tasted it. It was like drinking counterfeit Pappy Van Winkle your whole life. You think it's fine until you have a sip of the real thing. Fortunately, the Vance family didn't have a strict no talking at the table rule. That would have been difficult for Leo. Despite Stella's immense wealth, her family wasn't like the stuffy aristocrats in movies, with servants standing behind every chair. While the family was clearly well off, her parents had a warm relationship and weren't overly formal. Victoria was a bit more reserved, but Richard was much more approachable. Victoria, you fool. I'm the approachable one. Plenty of people who thought Richard was approachable have since disappeared. Richard turned to Leo. How did you find this bourbon? It smells fantastic, exactly right. Leo remembered his uncle's advice. Be honest. If you want something to last, be sincere. Trying to be clever all the time is exhausting, especially with people you'll be seeing regularly. Just say it like it is. Being a smartass isn't necessarily a point in your favor. Sincerity is. The meal was a pleasant affair for both hosts and guests, though it was a bit wasteful. A lot of food was left over, and that was after the young, hungry Leo did his part. A man in his early 20s is at the peak of his appetite. At Richard Vance's age, the spirit is willing, but the stomach is weak. Even when you want to eat more, you just can't. The heroes of old epics who could order 5 pounds of beef were warriors and knights, not scholars. Scholars didn't work out. They had weak constitutions and couldn't digest that much meat without complications. The head chef Victoria had hired was a big name. He'd arrived with his own set of tools in a dedicated vehicle, accompanied by 4 assistants. It was a thoroughly professional operation. Many of the ingredients were things Leo had never even seen before. The chef had a flair for ceremony, even providing printed menus for the home-cooked meal with descriptions of each dish. After dinner, he came out to ask for feedback. This chef was clearly high-level. He was a portly man, but his chef's hat, his toque, was extraordinarily tall, like something an undertaker in an old movie would wear. Back when he was working in a kitchen, Chef Wu had told him that the height of a chef's hat signifies their rank and experience. The head chef, the regular cooks, and the kitchen hands all wore different hats. It wasn't just the height. The number of pleats also held meaning. A head chef's hat is typically around 11.5 inches tall. Only the top chefs wore them. Leo had glanced at the chef's bio on the menu. It said he was the direct disciple of one of the 12 nationally recognized master chefs. So Leo had eaten with a sense of reverence and high expectation. But having worked in the restaurant business himself, he found the food a little average. Perhaps the chef's reputation had set his expectations too high. Besides, there's a difference between home cooking and restaurant food. You can eat home-style food every day without getting tired of it, but you get sick of restaurant fare after just a few days. This chef wasn't easy to book. It was only through Victoria's financial clout and the fact that he happened to be in the city that they were able to hire him. Aside from the food not being as mind-blowing as he'd hoped, Leo had to admit the service was impeccable. The servers, the plating, the presentation, the detailed explanations, it was all elegant and high class. If you were hosting a party, bringing in a team like this would certainly be convenient. The chef only came out after the family had finished eating. But as is typical with polite society, when asked face-to-face if the food was good, most people, unless they're in a terrible mood, will be gracious and offer praise rather than criticism. Of course, if the chef's repeat business is low, he'll get the real message. The food wasn't good. Anonymous reviews don't work either. It's like when a teacher sends an anonymous feedback link to parents. With so few students in a class, how anonymous can it really be? Unless something is truly unbearable, we tend to grin and bear it. We prefer to give people the benefit of the doubt and let the market deliver the verdict. The chef, Chef Dong, was confident. He wasn't so much asking for feedback as he was preparing to receive a round of applause. It was like a teacher asking a leading question, waiting for the students to rack their brains for adjectives. Today, however, there were a lot of leftovers. But the host had provided so many ingredients that he'd simply made more food. He was experienced. Many wealthy clients hired him for the prestige, and waste was just another part of the spectacle. Still, he was surprised to see that the expensive fish was largely untouched, while the other dishes had been consumed more readily. That fish was the real deal, and Chef Dong knew his ingredients. These were truly wealthy people. No ostentatious displays, but the ingredients were all top tier, some he rarely got to see himself. Chef Dong maintained a warm smile, though inwardly he was grumbling that the rich couldn't appreciate fine food. It was like a filmmaker blaming the audience for not being sophisticated enough to understand a good movie, or a novelist blaming the readers. This chef was blaming the diners. He prepared to go through the motions so he could pack up and leave. Leo had been a little nervous at the start of the meal, but he gradually relaxed and focused on eating, not wanting Victoria's efforts to go to waste. He was surprised to find one particular side dish to be exceptionally delicious, a smashed cucumber salad. The flavor was unique, a sweet and sour base with a hint of spice, incredibly complex. When the chef came over, Leo frankly and honestly praised his cucumber salad. Chef Dong was a little surprised to hear someone single out the dish. This one knew his food. Usually, even if the host liked a particular dish, they wouldn't praise it so specifically. The salad was his little secret. He prepared the cucumbers as if he were making a seafood crudo, pretending the cucumber was a piece of live seafood. The resulting flavor was very special. It was a clever trick, simple once explained, but with subtle differences in technique. Chef Dong took a closer look at the young man who had complimented him. He hadn't been paying much attention to the others, directing his comments mainly at Victoria. It was like giving a speech and seeing the audience as a blur of faces. But on closer inspection, the young man looked familiar. He looked again. It's you. That's right. The rising star of the culinary world. The owner of a private kitchen with a months-long waiting list. They say customers come in all shapes and sizes. As long as a person isn't under house arrest, they can be a customer. Many of Chef Dong's peers had gone to Leo's private kitchen to try the food. Of course, they booked and paid like everyone else. There was a pecking order in the culinary world. First, location. A standalone restaurant was better than one in a prime commercial district, which was better than one in a high-end mall, and so on, down to a street stall. The more upscale the location, the more industry recognition you got. You could claim your street food was a taste of heaven, but they'd never accept it. In terms of cuisine, things like molecular gastronomy and East-West fusion were considered high-end, though traditional chefs disagreed, believing the old ways, which required years of practice, were still the best. Chef Dong was based in the capital, where there was more demand for a chef of his caliber. He'd come to Bridgeport because he'd heard from clients in the capital about a private kitchen here that was supposedly divine, a place even the top brass loved, even having its food specially flown in. After dinner, they strolled through the gardens for half an hour and still didn't see all of it. The grounds were stunning, with an unobstructed view. The property backed up to a cliff, though not right at the edge. There was still a good distance. The villa's location had a strategic, easily defensible feel to it. It seemed Mr. Vance, the billionaire, was a very cautious man. During the walk, Leo almost made a fool of himself. He saw a circular, paved area in the backyard and thought it was for some strange sport, or maybe for practicing golf swings. But it wasn't. Stella explained it was a helipad. Holy crap, Leo thought. Today was an eye-opening experience. It also reinforced his impression that Mr. Vance was incredibly careful. No wonder he was so rich. The place was like a fortress with plenty of escape routes. He had transportation covering land, sea, and air. There was even an elevator on the cliffside that went directly down to a dock for a yacht. The sheer number of vehicles made Leo wonder if Stella's father was involved in some shady business. His escape plans were certainly comprehensive. A helicopter was more convenient than a private jet, which required filing a flight plan at least 24 hours in advance. And Stella said she knew how to fly and drive all of them. She'd learned everything. The lives of the wealthy were certainly demanding. A normal person just needed a driver's license, and they could even opt for an automatic. The rich had to get a private pilot license, PPL, to fly themselves or their friends. A commercial license was even harder. Getting a basic PPL required 35 hours of theory and 40 hours of practical flight training, after which you could fly single-engine planes, helicopters, and other aircraft. And besides the pilot's license, you also needed one for a boat. The helicopter wasn't on the pad today, but several yachts were moored in the cove below the cliff. They walked for half an hour. A winter breeze was blowing, but he imagined a garden would be lovely when it warmed up. It would probably be beautiful covered in snow, too, though it rarely snowed near the university. Back inside, it was time for tea. They went to Victoria's tea room. The room was decorated in an elegant, traditional style, but it felt soft and inviting, not cold. The various jars and pots on display all looked priceless and were arranged beautifully. An entire wall was a grid of shelves displaying hundreds of different cups and pots, a rich and orderly collection. Leo picked up a blue and white porcelain cup. The mark on the bottom indicated it was a modern replica of a Ming Dynasty piece by a famous artist, Ruan Dingrong. It looked familiar. He'd seen it somewhere before. A single cup like this was worth over $10,000, and there was a whole wall of them. Victoria certainly had a nice hobby. Victoria prepared the tea while Leo and Stella sat down with her. Richard joined them as well. He wasn't patient enough for the intricate process of a formal tea ceremony, but after years of keeping his wife company, he'd grown accustomed to it. At the very least, he could tell good tea from bad. The problem with drinking so much tea with his wife was that almost any tea he had outside their home tasted terrible. He couldn't articulate what made good tea good, but he could certainly taste when it was bad. Leo tasted the tea Victoria brewed. Honestly, it was quite good. She was one of the most knowledgeable tea drinkers he knew, second only to Joyrun. Then again, he didn't know many people in the industry. Victoria's tea was gentle and unhurried, with a subtle sweetness. The flavor of a person's tea can reflect their personality. For example, the tea made by the master, Mr. Mikami, had a rigorous yet slightly lost quality to it, heavy and solemn, with a final hint of bitterness. Joyrun's tea was perfectly balanced and well-rounded, just like her. The tea was like the person. Since Victoria had already started brewing before they arrived, after 2 infusions, she gestured for Leo to take over. "I still can't forget the tea you made last time," she said. Thinking back, "I've never had any better." Leo replied obediently. "Anytime you'd like some, Mrs. Vance, just let me know. I'll make it for you." Richard thought, "Isn't anyone in this house going to stop this show-off? I feel like my own status is slipping." And so, they watched a live-action version of Silas, the tea master. Leo was dressed impeccably for his first visit, in an outfit Stella had personally selected and had custom-made to fit him perfectly. In the TV show, he wore ancient robes and a wig. In real life, he had short hair. At first glance, Richard hadn't thought the kid was particularly handsome. He himself had been a looker in his youth, the local heartthrob. But now, watching the boy sit at the tea table, focused and silent as he heated the water, rinsed the leaves, and poured the tea, he had to admit, the kid was handsome. It was no wonder his daughter liked him enough to bring him home. There was something captivatingly earnest about the way he did things. Leo was used to it. When he started a task, he treated it as a mission, immersing himself completely. He didn't get distracted or look at his phone. You had to do the work eventually, so you might as well focus and enjoy it. The tea for Victoria's collection was a single-origin oolong with an almond fragrance. As he drank, he could taste the fruitiness, reminiscent of the sweet kernel inside an apricot pit you'd save as a child, cracking it open with a rock to find the sweet nut inside. The tea had that same feeling, leaving a sweet, lingering taste that was both refreshing and sunny. It was so pleasant it made his back break out in a light sweat, a sign of good mood, his pores opening, his whole body feeling clear. Leo brewed one type of tea, but each infusion had a different flavor, building in layers. It was magnificent. Even Richard, who usually just drank tea to humor his wife, felt the joy of it today. It turned out it wasn't that he didn't know how to appreciate tea. It was that the person making it had never been a true professional. Stella snapped a photo of Leo as he brewed the tea. He looked incredibly handsome, at least through the eyes of someone in love. Noble and restrained, gentle as the wind. After the tea, Leo felt it was about time to leave. If they stayed any longer, they'd be there for dinner. He made an excuse, saying he had to get to the horse ranch to greet some guests. It wasn't just an excuse, there really were guests. His assistant, Lou, had told him that the client from the Middle East who had sent the big toy was here. He wanted to arrange a little matchmaking session for his mare, Ellie, with Monarch. Leo politely said his goodbyes and added Mr. Vance on his messaging app. Mr. Vance's profile picture was of an eagle soaring through the sky. A moment later, he received a notification. It was a payment from the kind and gracious Mrs. Vance, $10,001.00. Assistant Lou picked up his new boss from his former boss's house. The weather was beautiful today, bright and sunny. Even though it was winter, the midday sun made it feel like it was in the high 60s, a very comfortable temperature. When Lou mentioned the rich guy from the Middle East, Leo was a bit confused. But the man's gift had arrived before he did, a Ferrari. It was hard to dislike a guest like that. Still, with a foreign visitor on the way, Leo immediately summoned Sean. This was rare footage. A quick search for Middle Eastern specialty on TikTok wouldn't show you oil, dates, or camels, but princes. You'd find the same script recycled over and over, with different influencers introducing a man with a cloth on his head as my husband, a Saudi prince. It was a wholesale market for princes, all of them shilling products. The guest arriving today was supposedly a prince too. Lou had done a background check, and seemed to be true, mainly because the guy was incredibly wealthy. In the car, Lou advised, in the Middle East, verbal agreements and promises are legally binding. So, when you're dealing with the Saudi prince, be very clear and precise. Don't be vague, to avoid any misunderstandings. Leo nodded. He asked about Lou's English proficiency. Lou answered modestly. I've passed the highest level exams. Daily conversation is no problem. Yeah, right, Leo thought. Sean was also on his way from the university. He was driving himself now that he had his license, though he'd been driving for years back home. The young guys where he was from could all drive. On the plains, you just point and go. His sister, Sarah, knew how to drive too. Sean was happily driving the Rivian R1S. Driving was a great stress reliever. The feeling of controlling a machine, making it move according to your will, was incredibly satisfying. He loaded his camera gear and laptop into the car. He had been editing at the restaurant when Leo called, and he'd left without a second thought. Before he walked out, Hannah Chun handed him a thermos of warm tea. Sean thanked her awkwardly. He couldn't tell if she was being especially nice to him or if she was just a thoughtful person who was kind to everyone. The traffic was heavy, but Sean navigated it expertly, arriving at the ranch first. He parked and started filming the scenery. Every video featuring Monarch got great engagement, probably because the landscape here was so unique and beautiful. Many people commented that it looked like it was in another country. A short while later, Leo arrived in the Bentley. And not long after that, the Saudi brother with the cloth on his head showed up. To be honest, Leo, probably brainwashed by modern beauty standards, thought the man was handsome. A high-bridged nose, a jawline sharp as a knife, deep-set eyes, long eyelashes. He couldn't see his physique under the robes, but he was tall. His white robe and head covering looked to be of high quality, not just plain white, but with intricate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. A strong fragrance emanated from him. They were apparently big on perfumes. The reason so many people impersonated Saudi princes online was a rumor that there were around 5,000 of them, and for privacy and political reasons, the royal family's official roster was not public. Only a few famous ones were known. Leo had no idea if the man before him was a real prince. His name was Fahd bin Apraka. Let's just call him Fahd. Fahd was handsome and young, looking to be in his late 20s, definitely not over 30. Foreigners tended to get puffy and gain weight quickly as they aged. Fahd was also surprised when he met Leo. His attendants had prepared a file on Fong. Fong was a member of the country's main political party. A portrait of Fong was incredibly famous. The old money crowd in Britain speculated that Fong was a mysterious Eastern aristocrat. Monarch had supposedly been bought by one. Fong was also a master of the tea ceremony, a basic skill for any noble. Fahd had bought many famous horses himself. He had only recently come of age and didn't have much pocket money yet. Only $6 million a month, which he spent almost completely, often going over budget. He loved animals, and his villa was like a small wildlife park. He'd raised cheetahs, lions, horses, snakes, and crocodiles. The hobbies of the rich are just that simple. In their world, it was probably like a young person in our world with only $600 a month to spend, also living paycheck to paycheck, who loves simulation games and raises virtual cheetahs, lions, and horses. Seeing Feng in person, Fad was impressed. We think Saudi princes are a big deal, but they probably see themselves as quite ordinary because there are so many of them. To Fad, the Eastern nobility were the real deal. Their country was huge and discreet, their aristocracy mysterious. The moment he saw the young man before him, Fad knew they were the same kind of people. Feng had the exact same aura as the young princes back home. Black hair, black eyes, dressed head to toe in bespoke clothing. He was a bit short, probably still quite young. Foreigners often thought Chinese people looked younger than their age. To Fad, Leo looked like a middle schooler, maybe 14 years old. He noticed the cameraman with Feng. Liu explained, and Fad nodded in understanding. TikTok. They use TikTok too. TikTok is great. When they shook hands, Fad squeezed a little harder than necessary. He was naturally strong, which was one reason he dared to keep so many wild animals. He thought he was powerful and not easily harmed. But to his surprise, Feng's strength was immense. He easily met Fad's grip, and his strength felt even greater. This must be that ancient Chinese martial art, Fad thought. Commoners don't have it, but the nobility do. After some pleasantries, they went to see Monarch. After all, that was why he had come all this way. Leo was glad he'd been studying English. He could now chat with Prince Fad without a translator, which made things much easier. Sean filmed quietly in the background, keeping a low profile. He thought Leo had improved so much. He could chat so naturally with a foreigner in English now. Back in their freshman year, they would go to the English corner together and be too shy to say anything beyond a few hesitant "how are yous." He got back to campus just as the sun was setting, the last rays of light streaking across the sky. He went to his office on the second-floor terrace of the restaurant and watched the sun dip into the lake. It wasn't even dark yet, but it felt like an incredibly long day had passed. He used to think he could only do one thing a day. Go to class, for instance, and then his energy would be completely depleted, leaving him to waste the rest of the day. But now he had managed to accomplish so much in a single day. Leo sat on the terrace, letting himself reboot. He couldn't believe he had successfully visited his girlfriend's family. It hadn't been as terrifying as he'd imagined. A light breeze stirred, not too cold. A little chill was good. It cooled his overheated brain and helped him think clearly. It had been an exciting day. A visit to a billionaire's home in the morning and a visit from a Saudi billionaire's son in the afternoon. A person's public image is crucial. For someone like Fad, their persona is all about wealth. Being around him was like bathing in money. It was an adrenaline rush. In contrast, if you were dealing with businessmen from other regions, you might have to be more cautious. It was an established practice to ship only the right shoes first on a large order, because some clever person in the past had ordered left shoes from one factory and right shoes from another, getting a full shipment for free. But with people like Fad, you didn't even think about being on your guard. You just assumed they were too rich to bother scamming you for a small amount. But it would be foolish to take internet jokes as reality. They were rich, not stupid. The wealth gap in their country was a chasm. They were also used to taming wild beasts. It wasn't a simple case of dumb, rich, and hurry up. It was more like a large, well-baited hook. Leo let the cool air clear his head, bringing him back down to earth. Socializing was exhausting and left him feeling untethered. As his mind calmed, he watched the crescent moon appear, the clouds scudding past. The sky turned from blue to a deep indigo. To the naked eye, it was already night, but his phone camera captured a beautiful, deep blue. He snapped a picture and sent it to Stella. She hadn't come back with him. Her dad probably would have had an aneurysm if she had. After a moment of melodrama on the terrace, he went downstairs. It was dinner time, the busiest part of the day at the restaurant. Though the staff weren't running, they moved with a quick, orderly pace. Leo changed into a chef's coat and went to help in the kitchen. He and Chef Wu were learning from each other. But because Leo's signature dishes were so exceptionally good, Chef Wu felt that the young boss was just being humble by saying he was learning from him, which made the older chef work even harder. Leo decided to try making braised pork. For a while in his childhood, he had hated it. The smell of his dad's braised pork was incredible, steam billowing out when he lifted the lid. People would line up to buy it. His dad, with his booming voice, would wield the cleaver like he was back in the factory, working a lathe. What did he hate about it? It was probably just adolescent angst, his brain the consistency of mush. Looking back, The braising liquid poured over rice was unbelievably fragrant. You could eat a whole bowl of rice with just the sauce. At first, neighbors would bring bowls to get some of the sauce, and his dad, being a good neighbor, would always give them some. But then one neighbor started coming every day, using the sauce to make her own braised pork to sell at a nearby stall, undercutting him by a few cents. In the end, her business failed because she was too cheap and used low-quality meat. In those lean years, every small business, every little hustle, was fiercely contested. Thinking about it now, there was a certain poignancy to those memories. His mother, who had always been so fashionable and put together, had gotten into a huge fight with that neighbor over it. Life was tight, but it was vibrant. He placed the best cuts of pork snugly in the pot. The spices slowly released their flavors, penetrating the meat as the temperature rose. The fat rendered out, infusing the sauce. Leo focused on his cooking, and his mind settled. Maybe he really was suited to take over the family business. Cooking centered him. Sean filmed quietly, each in their own world. The kitchen, with its fire and steam, was incredibly photogenic. Chef Wu hovered nearby, like a surgical assistant, ready to dab Leo's brow with a handkerchief or offer him a bottle of water. But Leo gave him no such opportunity, quickly wiping away any sweat himself. It was hard to accept that kind of delicate treatment from a man who weighed over 250 pounds. The kitchen was hot, but the ventilation system was good. Lost in the process, Leo got a taste of what it would be like to inherit the braised pork business. It wasn't so bad. It was actually quite interesting. During the dinner service, there was no clinking of glasses. After one table had gotten drunk and caused a scene, they were swiftly dealt with, and now alcohol was limited. Some customers complained at first, but new regulations came out shortly after, and the complaints stopped. The focus was on good food and good soup. People are generally happier eating dinner than lunch. After dinner, you can rest. After lunch, you have to go back to work, which cast a pall over the meal. Elsewhere in the city, 2 people were having dinner. They were colleagues. 3 would have been a gathering, which could be reported, but 2 was fine. After a long day, the last thing Colin Bell wanted was to spend more time with his boss. He fantasized about kicking the man and yelling, "Go to hell. Isn't your endless droning at the office enough?" But that was just a fantasy. In reality, he wore the mask of a diligent, hard-working employee. He had been temporarily transferred from a lower-level department. This was how the system worked now. They'd dangle the carrot of a permanent position to get transferees to work themselves to the bone. In reality, 9.5 out of 10 would be sent back to their original posts after their labor was fully exploited. The main office had few positions but great benefits, and most of those went to people with connections who didn't do any work. The actual work was done by the transferees. And now his boss was dragging him out for dinner, saying it was his treat. Colin had to act grateful, but all he wanted was to be at home, eating his own food, scrolling through his phone, and playing video games. That would be true happiness. Tonight's braised pork was especially delicious. The aroma was intoxicating, and after eating, his stomach felt so content that all he wanted to do was lie down and bask in the happy fullness. Leo tried a piece. It wasn't fully seasoned yet, but he could taste the natural sweetness of the meat. It was rare to find that kind of flavor anymore. Most meat tasted either bland or overly salty. Thinking about it, the modern pig's living conditions made sense of it. Factory farming looked cleaner and more advanced, but the pigs were crammed into smaller spaces and fed a diet of commercial feed of questionable quality, all designed to fatten them up quickly. In the old days, pigs didn't have climate control or fancy ventilation systems, but they had space. They ate scraps and wild greens, cooked for them daily. The pigs themselves knew which environment produced better-tasting meat. Chef Wu was in charge of purchasing. He'd get up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go to the market, picking out the ingredients himself to ensure freshness before going back for a nap. The pork he bought was excellent. The city was known for a local breed of small, fragrant pig, but it was easy to get ripped off if you didn't know what you were looking for. The poor Chef Wu selected was a pale pink, with clear muscle texture and glossy white fat. He avoided meat that was dark red or grayish, or had yellowed fat, which could be signs of spoilage or water injection. If the color wasn't a clear indicator, he'd use his hands. Fresh pork would spring back immediately when pressed, firm and elastic. Bad meat would feel moist, but not sticky, and it wouldn't ooze bloody water, a sure sign of water injection. Finally, he'd rely on his nose. Fresh pork has a faint metallic smell, while spoiled meat has a sour or ammonia-like odor. The cut Chef Wu had chosen was beautifully marbled, the perfect ratio of fat to lean meat. Not too tough, not too greasy. Julian Zhu, nicknamed Piggy, couldn't believe pork could taste this good. Because of his nickname, He usually avoided eating it, always picking at his food. But this was incredible. He couldn't resist snapping a picture and sending it to his family's group chat. He then had the newly acquainted Sean take a photo of him to send as well. Sean was becoming a master photographer. He captured Julian looking sharp and energetic. It was as if an idea had suddenly sparked in Julian's mind, like his scattered soul had finally reassembled itself. He looked clear-eyed and full of life, a stark contrast to his usual listless, dazed demeanor. Sending a picture of a feast late at night successfully made his entire family hungry. They had sent him off to get some discipline, and the results were better than they could have hoped. He was no longer a picky eater, he was going to school, and his whole attitude had improved. The group chat flooded with thumbs-up emojis. Even Julian's older brother was a little envious and wanted a visit. Then again, he remembered that his brother's race cars had all been packed up and shipped away, and a feeling of schadenfreude returned. Leo also reported his successful visit to his girlfriend's family in his own 3-person group chat, thanking Professor Hoffman and Judge Cole for their help with the gifts. He then sent a video of himself making the braised pork. Still in the experimental phase, but it smells amazing. Once I perfect it, I'll send some your way. Professor Hoffman replied, "Excellent. If possible, my wife would love some of those fried dough twists." Judge Cole, "That braised pork looks good." It was a casual chat. The visit went well, and he expressed his thanks. Leo didn't offer to pay them. They were elders, and you couldn't put a price on the things they prepared for him. Sending them his homemade food was a much more personal and fitting way to show his appreciation. Finally, the long day was over. Leo walked back to the dorm with his roommates. Only then did he share the full story of his visit to Stella's house, showing them a screenshot of the payment from Stella's mom. His reward was a collective beatdown from his envious, jealous, and resentful roommates. Of course, it didn't hit him hard. They couldn't win a real fight with him anymore, but they took the opportunity to pinch and shove him. "Alex, that mother-in-law is definitely thrilled with you. A 10,000 to 1 catch." Jordan, "So jealous." Sean, "Was her dad scary?" Leo, "I didn't think so. He seemed pretty nice, and her parents have a great relationship. The atmosphere at home is good. I'm just not sure if there was a problem with my gifts. They had weird expressions when they saw them. But her dad said he's going to buy me a car. Lou asked me what kind of car I liked, and I mentioned I'd never driven a Cullinan, so her dad said he'd get me one." This time, Jordan tackled him, sitting squarely on his back while the others joined in. This show-off was too much. It was one thing to be a trophy husband to his girlfriend, but after one visit, he was already living off her parents too. The playful roughhousing was the best way for guys to de-stress. After a good, boisterous tussle, Leo felt like he was finally back in his own skin, grounded again. Sometimes, a person just needs to get beaten up a little. Afterward, they all admired the large chunk of agarwood from Prince Fod. Rubbing it made the scent stronger, a rich, oily fragrance of blooming flowers mixed with a faint, slightly bitter scent of medicinal herbs. In the comments of Sean's TikTok video, some expert had analyzed it, saying that based on the resin patterns and shape, it was a Vietnamese variety that cost at least $150,000 per kilogram. Leo hefted the piece of wood. It was surprisingly heavy, dense enough to sink in water. He decided to put it on his nightstand. It was supposed to help with sleep. Just as they were getting ready for bed, Leo got a message from his uncle, Clay. "How did the visit go today?" "Leo, it went well, I think." "Clay, the first time I formally visited your aunt's family, her parents loved me. Her mom was worried I'd get tired walking from the dorm to my classes, so she bought me a Trek mountain bike worth over $2,000. Her dad recommended me for a research project with a budget of over $200,000. Hith. Leo suspected his uncle wasn't calling to check on him, but to brag about his own glory days. He wasn't going to let him get away with it. The Foster family tradition of one-upmanship had to be maintained. He sent his uncle a screenshot of the payment for Victoria Vance. "I'm not as impressive. No research projects for me," he typed. "But I just got my driver's license, and my girlfriend's dad said he's going to buy me a Cullinan. What do you think, Uncle? Does that mean he's satisfied with me?" Waking up in the morning, Leo realized he had nothing specific planned for the day. He could be lazy, or he could be productive. The freedom was a relief. Having prearranged plans always gave him a sense of just going through the motions. He got up, washed his face, and drank some honey water. The dorm was now well-stocked with breakfast foods, courtesy of Chef Wu, who worried that the boss might get hungry late at night, in the morning, or while studying. There was fruit, milk, yogurt, homemade rice cakes, nuts, and jerky. The homemade snacks were surprisingly good. It was a great feeling to have a dedicated chef who genuinely wanted to cook for you, not just as a job for customers. After decades in the workforce, Chef Wu was an expert at reading his bosses. This new young boss was different from the last one. He was practical. As long as you did your job well, he didn't care if you took a break afterward. He didn't need flattery. He wanted to see results. His previous boss was all about appearances and sweet talk. Chef Wu prepared snacks for Leo's dorm, and of course, for Stella's as well. In his room, Sean and Jordan never lacked for food. Alex was rarely around to eat. In Stella's dorm, Jessica had slept alone again last night. Her room was also full of snacks now, so at least she wouldn't go hungry anymore. She helped out at the private kitchen whenever she had free time, so she felt she could eat the snacks Chef Wu provided with a clear conscience. Jessica had always been careful about give and take, trying never to take advantage of others. Her life experience had taught her that taking small advantages could lead to big losses. A girl she worked with one summer had gotten chummy with the manager and was assigned all the easy tasks. But the manager wasn't her relative. Why would he help her for no reason? Eventually, she had to pay it back. She had come out of work for a living, but ended up paying a much higher price than just her labor. Don't take advantage, and you won't suffer a great loss. That was her motto. Lately, she'd been feeling a new kind of confusion. Her dad's leg was injured, so he couldn't go out to play cards. He'd call her from time to time, mostly to berate her for being unfilial and to praise his new girlfriend, Tina. Tina was supposedly taking great care of him, and Tina's daughter had even brought him sticky rice cakes. He'd tell Jessica not to expect to inherit his house. He was leaving it to Tina. She used to get furious at these calls. Her dad was the type to think someone was a saint for giving him 2 buns, while completely ignoring the sacrifices his own family made. Her uncle and aunt had been taken advantage of by him countless times, yet he never appreciated it. Now he was calling to curse out his daughter, his brother for not liking his new girlfriend, his sister-in-law for speaking ill of her, and his sister for not giving her a gift. He was convinced Tina was with him for love. He believed Tina, who had her own daughter and house, only wanted him to buy a new house to silence the gossip from his siblings and to have a private world for just the 2 of them. Jessica was numb to it now. Let him do what he wanted. He could threaten to disinherit her all he wanted. It wasn't like there was a place for her at home anyway. Her old bedroom had been turned into a storage room. At least with his bad leg, he wasn't racking up new gambling debts. The house was all he had left. Let him do what he wanted with it. If things got too out of hand, her aunt and uncle would probably step in. They had helped him buy the house in the first place, just to make sure he had a place to live. On the other hand, her mother from the sky, Julianne, sent her copy-pasted greetings every day, occasionally suggesting she go to school in Singapore. Jessica now had some savings. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to scramble for her next meal. She had never had the luxury of thinking about the future. She just went wherever life took her. Now, she had time to stop and think. What did she want to do? She had choices. She could get a job after graduation or go to grad school. The ability to choose was a wonderful thing. Of course, studying in Singapore was not one of her options. She didn't want to take advantage of Julianne either. She knew Leo had visited Stella's family today. She was envious. Stella had a normal family. She could bring her boyfriend home without a fuss. If she brought someone home, it would probably be the end of the relationship. Her dad was capable of demanding a 6-figure gift. He'd even tried to marry her off in her junior year to some guy from a family that owned a factory. The only downside, he'd said, was that the guy was short, under 5'3". She had no desire to date. Lying flat and staying single for life seemed like a good plan. No need to mess up someone else's life or compromise her own. Stella and her other 2 roommates were out, so Jessica could play music out loud. She had Leo's TikTok videos playing on a loop. She got up and began her morning stretches. Her body was incredibly flexible. She could easily fold herself in half, her torso resting on her legs. For a time, she had even worked part-time as a yoga instructor at a gym. If you work enough odd jobs, you realize that most professionals aren't that professional. She had learned yoga from online videos, took a few classes at a training center by working there part-time to learn, and then started teaching others. Of course, it was a basic gym. High-end gyms in big cities required multiple certifications, which was difficult because you had to pay for 200 to 500 hours of training in anatomy, physiology, and yoga philosophy before you could even take the exam. You had to spend money to make money. So she was just a part-time instructor, good enough to fool the beginners. If you're new to yoga at a gym, you can't always trust the teacher. When they tell you to push yourself, some poses can be risky, and many instructors are just there to make a living, hastily put on the job. But she was diligent in her own practice. A beautiful day begins with morning yoga, and her favorite soundtrack was Leo's song, A Little Bit of Perfect, light and happy. On campus, if you didn't run or hide, if you just acted like you belonged, students were actually too embarrassed to bother you. You became part of the scenery. If you were relaxed about it, everything was relaxed. And so Leo ran, without bodyguards or a mask, and had to hide his face. He was so natural about it that even the most die-hard fans of Silas, who had cried buckets over his character, would calm down when they saw him in person. It was like with a dog. If you don't bolt, it won't chase you. But the moment you run, its instincts kick in. Leo ran with Moose, looking completely at ease. No one asked for his autograph. No one mobbed him. When people passed him, they just smiled and said hello. He subconsciously tried to project an air of aloofness, channeling his girlfriend's cool demeanor. People who spend a lot of time together start to resemble each other. Part of it is physiological. The exchange of saliva during kissing can synchronize enzymes, and part of it is psychological. You start to emulate the people you like. With his cool aura activated, the space around him seemed to widen. After his run, Leo took Moose to the student strip for breakfast as usual. The area seemed more crowded than usual. He wasn't conceited enough to think it was because of him. The student strip was open to the public, unlike the main campus, which required an ID or an application to enter. From a distance, he could see a line at the spicy rice cake shop. It had blown up after he'd posted a TikTok about it. The owner, instead of getting arrogant and immediately raising prices, had handled the sudden fame well. He hired students for work-study, set up an awning, and served free red date tea to people waiting in line. Some students would queue up just for the tea. The rice cakes themselves were still excellent. He used plenty of fresh greens. The rice cakes were a traditional sticky rice variety from his hometown, not the store-bought kind, and he was generous with the lard he rendered himself, which made them incredibly fragrant. He had successfully established his brand, but it was still a small business. Even with the popularity, it just meant he was busier and earning a bit more than expected. It wasn't like he was getting rich overnight. If he could keep it up for the long haul, like Leo's family's braised pork shop, that would be a success in itself. Leo's family now owned a condo, a modest car, and a small storefront, and his parents had savings set aside for his future. In most cities, that was a pretty good life. The owner of the rice cake shop had thanked Leo earnestly. Not with a share of the business, of course. He didn't even have Leo's contact information. He had gone to the university and, in a very old-fashioned gesture, presented a commendation banner to the administration office. The banner was still hanging there, reading, "To our treasure, student Leo Foster. Your post made us famous, fired up our small shop. We are grateful for your help and will never forget your kindness. Old Pooh's Spicy Rice Cakes," at the entrance to the student strip. When Ms. Miller had called Leo to receive the banner, he had felt incredibly awkward. It felt like the kind of miracle worker banner you'd see at a traditional medicine clinic. The owner had also given Leo a VIP card for a lifetime supply of free rice cakes. The last person to give him a lifetime membership was the owner of the boxing club. At his young age, Leo had already secured lifetime commitments from two old men. But receiving the banner, as awkward as it was, did feel good. The thing about those banners is that they're usually presented not to the individual, but to their superior department for the bosses to see. The honor was the point, not the banner itself. Even with the lifetime supply, Leo decided to skip it today. There were too many people. The breakfast burrito cart, run by the uncle with a mortgage on an Ocean View house, was also popular now, with a line of students and delivery drivers. Leo had been photographed buying burritos and corn dogs there with Moose many times, which had made it a minor attraction. Maybe people were too shy to approach him directly, but they could eat what he ate, do what he did, and feel a little closer to their idol. For most, celebrity worship wasn't really about the person. It was about finding a lifestyle, something to hold on to. Everywhere was crowded. The legendary breakfast bowl place had always been packed, even without his help. The owner was gorgeous. That alone made the food seem delicious. She was the queen of the student strip. In the end, Leo opted for fried dough sticks and soy milk. He got a bowl of plain savory porridge for Moose. The freshly fried dough sticks were amazing, something he could never replicate himself. That perfect combination of crispy and soft that only comes from old oil. You had to eat them on the spot. They didn't travel well. The shop was tucked away in the back, so it was quieter. Finally, he could sit down, eat, and scroll through his phone. The most relaxing part of the day. He browsed his social feed. He had added a lot of influential people lately and noticed they rarely posted. Professor Hoffman was an exception. He posted his photography and occasional philosophical musings, using his feed like a notebook to record flashes of inspiration. He said a publisher wanted him to write a book, so he was just going to post his thoughts as they came and then compile them later. Leave it to a best-selling author to get his random ramblings published, Leo thought. Still, the professor's posts had substance. Yesterday's was, to govern the world, one must understand that circumstances vary by person, but people are the same in their circumstances. Leo didn't get it, but he liked it anyway. Valerie Steele, the foreign expert he'd met at the conference, was also a frequent poster. She traveled and ate, and her foreigner's perspective was often interesting. For example, she had visited a hot spring with various medicinal pools and declared that it was a Chinese kung fu bath that could heal hidden injuries and give you inner energy. Lately, Valerie's posts had been more frequent. It seemed she was planning to get married. A recent post read, "My boyfriend proposed today, and he said he wants to give me a $58,888 colorful gift. It's so magical. In my country, the bride's family traditionally pays for the wedding, or now it's shared. But if you ask for that much money before the wedding, you could be charged with fraud." After breakfast, Leo took Moose home. A new dog sitter was looking after him these days, and the apartment was much cleaner. Moose's owner, Paige, was a bit busy. So many people wanted her to stream. She was naturally a very lazy person. The only thing that used to motivate her was bothering Leo. Now, she was inexplicably busy, so busy she couldn't believe she was capable of being so diligent. It was incredible, but the money was just too good. Paige was now earning more than enough to cover her expenses. In fact, she was too busy to spend money, so she had a lot left over. But she was angry. She had started this whole thing on Leo's advice, just to find something to do. But then she'd accidentally gotten good at it. She was proud and wanted to show off, secretly hoping to earn more than him. She even fantasized about being his sugar mama, giving him tons of money, a thought that made her cackle out loud. A complicated girl. Her way of liking a guy was first to bully him, then to try to surpass him. If she had figured things out a little earlier and used her natural advantages, she wouldn't still be single. But she had completely missed the point. Adorably clueless. Since The Chancellor's Gambit aired and Silas became a hit, Paige felt like she was done for. There was no way she could catch up. Leo realized it had been a few days since he'd seen her. He saw Moose more often than he saw Paige. After dropping off the dog, Leo headed back to his dorm. On the way, he got a call from Joyrin. "I saw the update on your roommate's account with our new tea. I've calculated the ad fee based on current TikTok rates. Should I send it to your usual account or a different one?" "You don't have to do that, Joy," Leo said. "I have a stake in a company, remember? That's more than enough. Besides, you prepared that tea for me to take to my girlfriend's house yesterday." Joy's crisp voice came through the phone. "Business is business. Your stake is for helping me open up the market. You deserve that. This TikTok account is a collaboration with your friends, so I have to pay for the ad. Your account has never run an ad before. I'm the one getting the good deal here. Sales jumped yesterday, and searches are up." Hearing her firm tone, Leo didn't argue. He gave her the number for the separate account they use for the channel's funds and told his assistant, Lou, to handle the taxes and Sean's cut. Joy was generous. For that one brief shot, Leo received a notification for a $70,000 deposit. In the dorm, Sean got the notification too. He counted the zeros several times. He couldn't believe it. Who would send him $70,000 by mistake? Leo explained it was the ad fee from Joy. Jordan, hearing this, stuck a chubby hand out from under his covers and gave a thumbs up. Classy. With an attitude like that, your friend Joy is going to be a huge success. A lot of people would just take the free publicity and keep quiet. But she paid you generously. Next time she asks you to do an ad, you won't be able to refuse. Leo realized it was true. They occasionally featured products in their videos, but Joy was the only one who had ever offered to pay. Because of that, if they ever did need to run ads to support the channel, she would be their first choice. Sean looked at the money in the account. His 20% was $14,000. His cut from his city's tourism promotion fund was $60,000. That was $74,000 right there. If he kept saving, maybe by the time his mom's kidney failed and she needed a transplant, he would have enough. The thought gave him a surge of energy. He wasn't tired at all. He had to learn how to do a live stream. Alex said he could stream the day of the concert. He wanted to learn. The concert would be streamed officially, of course, but that would be for everyone, not just Leo. And he needed to film videos too. He decided to focus on that for the next few days and post some of his backlog of Leo's videos. Leo got back to the dorm and tidied up, then headed to a classroom to study. It felt like he hadn't studied in ages. Skip one day, then another, and inertia sets in. Besides, his goduncle had said he was coming for a conference. It would be embarrassing if he showed up and found Leo slacking off. Lou sent him a message saying Prince Fod was going back to the ranch today, possibly with friends. Leo told Lou to handle it. He was a bit tired from the last 2 days and needed to focus on his studies. He felt a little guilty for not sending his homework to his goduncle recently. Studying was what gave him confidence these days, and it wasn't as hard as he thought. He could converse normally with Prince Fod. After more than a decade of studying English, he should be able to do that much. The dorm supervisor had praised his handwriting. No praise is ever wasted. He was a college student, after all. People said college students don't know anything, but at least they should be able to write decently. You can't think about someone without them appearing. On his way to the classroom, Leo got a message from his goduncle. Dr. Shun, I've arrived in the state. No need to pick me up. The university has arranged everything. I'll find you when I'm done. You focus on your studies. Leo, okay, godfather. Is godmother with you? If I remember correctly, her family is from here, right? She's Paige's aunt. Dr. Shun, your godmother is here. Your sister had to work, so she's taking a day off and coming tomorrow. Leo, I'll contact my sister then and arrange to pick her up. Dr. Shun, photo of a conference hall, okay. Talk later. Leo, photo of his classroom notes. He arrived at the classroom. The two traditional grad school NPC students were there, a comforting sight. They didn't post on social media or talk about him, so he was left in peace. They just greeted him quietly when he came in. They had exchanged yogurt for his autograph, signed Silas, for their families. It was a strange feeling. An actor's fame seemed to have little to do with their own efforts. He had played this role a long time ago, and only now that it was airing was it becoming a hit. But the whole process was long and fraught with uncertainty. If someone in the cast had a scandal, the show might never have aired. And even if it did, there was no guarantee it would be a hit. It really was all about luck. Leo decided to study first and contact his sister, Shelley, later, while his morning brain was still fresh. The most difficult subjects were best tackled now. By the afternoon, his brain would be fried. An hour of morning study was worth a whole afternoon. The evening was even worse. His mind was active but not suited for learning. The morning hummed along like the cicadas outside. Because of their association with summer, cicadas often appear in literature as romantic and refreshing. In reality, the cicada song is produced by the male's vibrating abdomen to attract a mate. If you listen closely, it sounds like he's saying, "Get over here, get over here, get over here." The morning was just like that cicada. A male cicada can vibrate its sound-producing organ 10,000 times a second to create its continuous call. In the morning, Leo's brain was just as active. Immersed in his textbook, his brain cells were probably firing just as fast, producing a continuous stream of thought. Study hard, achieve success, attract a beautiful and healthy female, and contribute to the continuation of a species. Humans and cicadas, in essence, were no different. Shelley had originally planned to ask her boss for some time off. She was, after all, in the privileged position of working for personal fulfillment rather than financial necessity. Ever since coming back from studying abroad, her initial ambitions of forging her own career path had collided with a hard reality. It all came back to her father. Without him, she probably wouldn't have even landed an interview. The work she was assigned could be done by anyone. It held no special value. The only thing special about her role was who her father was. She was self-aware enough not to cause trouble. At least having a job gave her family some peace of mind. And even though she'd been thrown from a horse recently, she still loved riding. Ever since she'd gotten older, she'd started to dislike visiting her mother's family in Chesterfield. Her grandparents were a bit old-fashioned, always nagging her mother about having only one daughter and the need for more children. It wasn't that they disliked Shelley, they just dispensed their nagging equally. Her aunt got an earful, too. But now, Chesterfield was where Leo was. Plus, Leo's friend had mentioned that Dylan Sloan had gifted him that horse, Monarch, and even set up a new ranch where they could ride. That was an irresistible draw. The Kennedy family, her mother's side of the family, did have a touch of that old-world patriarchal structure. The son inherited the family business and the lion's share of the assets. The daughters were married off with generous dowries and were given a house in the city as a safety net. If a daughter's life didn't go as planned, she had a place of her own to return to, rather than having to move back into a home now run by her brother and sister-in-law. A daughter's inheritance was probably less than a tenth of the son's. Truthfully, that's how many business families in Chesterfield structured things. It wasn't purely about gender. Even among several brothers, the one chosen to lead the company would receive the vast majority. The others would get dividends, enough to live comfortably. The assets couldn't be split evenly, or the family's influence would dwindle with each generation until it vanished. It was a simple business principle. You can't split the captain's chair. It weakens the ship. To stay strong, a family needed one powerful individual with the most resources to drive growth. The competition wasn't within the family. It was against the rest of the country, the rest of the world. Shelley's uncle, Paige Kennedy's father, had taken over the family business and worked diligently. Once he'd found his footing, he bought his sister a larger house in a more central location and set her up with a steady stream of dividends. It wasn't a fortune, but it was more than enough for a comfortable life. Her grandparents' nagging had subsided recently, mostly because their heir had only produced 2 granddaughters. Any more complaints would just be tiresome. Besides, the elder granddaughter was turning out to be quite impressive. As for Shelley, her request for time off was denied. Her boss rejected it with a stern expression. Requesting leave? Young people shouldn't always be thinking about taking vacations. You need to show some dedication, some responsibility. This week, I'm sending you to Chesterfield on a business trip to survey the market. Follow the standard travel procedures. You'll get a per diem, and your food and lodging will be reimbursed. Shelley was speechless. Thank you, sir. So, in the end, she didn't get a vacation. She got a fully expensed business trip with overtime pay and a travel stipend. The leadership at the pharmaceutical company was terrified she might quit. They had hired the international student in the first place as a favor to Dr. Shun, and her qualifications were more than adequate. But now with Dr. Shun's reputation soaring and whispers of a major appointment in D.C., the company's executives were on edge. They had to keep her. If they couldn't hold on to the big shot himself, keeping his daughter on the payroll was the next best thing. It maintained a connection, a thread of goodwill. Meanwhile, Dr. Shun's godson, Leo, was studying with intense focus. He had the time dilation buff active, and his brain felt so saturated that all he wanted to do was collapse onto a couch like a deflated balloon. Give him a phone and a sofa right now, and half the day would vanish. Learning was mentally exhausting. A mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Host has studied diligently, overcome restlessness and the urge to be lazy, and returned to his books. Reward: buff, enhanced lower body stamina, 3 days. The bizarre reward jolted Leo back to reality. Was it because I was shaking my leg so much during that last half hour? He'd started to get tired, his mind wandering, and his most obvious tell was a bouncing leg. It was a universal sign. If you see someone staring intently at a book but their leg is going a mile a minute, they're probably miles away in their head. But then he reconsidered. It probably wasn't that random. When he'd acquired Piggy's racing skills, he'd done some research. Driving a race car was no easy feat. It required an hour of continuous, high-frequency braking. In a single race, a driver might hit the brake over 800 times, with each press exerting more than 175 pounds of pressure from their leg. So those rich kids, the ones their parents saw as spoiled brats and troublemakers, were actually enduring a grueling physical ordeal every time they raced. They'd call it passion, a spirit of daring and perseverance. This is way harder than the stuff Dad drones on about from his youth. I pushed through it. Shouldn't you praise me? The whole world misunderstands me. Let all burn. That was probably the thought process of a trust fund kid after getting chewed out by his parents upon returning, exhausted but proud, from the track. Racing wasn't just joyriding. It was a serious, physically demanding way to get into trouble. You couldn't be good at it without true dedication. Piggy was exactly like that. He had a life-or-death endurance when it came to racing, a commitment far more strenuous than simple partying. Leo picked up his phone to decompress, sipping a yogurt and scrolling through his feed. In the blended family group chat, his sister Shelley announced she was on her way on a paid business trip. Shelley, I checked, and your university is hosting a charity concert? It looks like the guests are Wu Ku and Chi Yu. They're both artists I really like. Leo remembered Alex mentioning it last night, and it still felt surreal. The world truly was a stage, and somehow, a concert had materialized out of thin air. It was all a bit baffling. But today, his WeChat and TikTok feeds were flooded with information about it. A sudden convergence of celebrities, a festival atmosphere. If they pulled it off, it would be a huge win for the city's tourism board. Anything was better than some of the cringy tourism slogans he'd seen, like a neighboring state's awkward campaign, Visit Delaware. We're here. After a bit more scrolling and finishing his yogurt, Leo said goodbye to the 2 campus fixtures, the groundskeeper and the security guard, and headed for the library. When his brain was tired from studying, his reward was to go to the library and read something easy. The walkthrough was a good way to clear his head, stretch his legs, and soak up some sun. He felt like a plant undergoing photosynthesis, absorbing some vitamin D and exchanging the stale air in his lungs for something fresh and clean. The city had its share of factories, but the university was nestled against a mountain and a lake, a pocket of pristine environment. He arrived at the library and lost himself in the endless ocean of the card catalog. When browsing a library, you had to be careful not to bite off more than you could chew. Leo's strategy was to pick one book that looked interesting and commit to it. He never let himself browse for too long. It led to decision paralysis, and he'd end up not wanting to read anything at all. Sometimes, you just had to trust fate. The book you picked was the one you needed in that moment. You didn't have to find the perfect, life-changing novel on the first try. Even if you did, you might not be ready to understand it. Leo chose a book about luxury cars. He realized their appeal wasn't just the price tag. It was a kind of sci-fi romanticism. For a guy, it was the ultimate fantasy. As the old saying went, a girl who truly loves you will buy you a Maybach. A girl who could buy you a Maybach understands a boy's romance. An aunt who could buy you a Maybach understands a boy's romance. A grandma who can buy you a Maybach understands a boy's romance. A brother who can buy you a Maybach understands a boy's romance. Leo flipped through the top 10. Pagani Huayra, McLaren, Lamborghini, Bugatti, Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, famous for having the best engines, some of which were now used in airplanes. Then there was Bentley, Aston Martin, and Koenigsegg, the dark horse often called the ghost supercar. And finally, Porsche. It felt almost anticlimactic to see Porsche on the list. It seemed so common by comparison. He'd known kids in high school who drove Porsches. Before, reading magazines like this had felt like pure fantasy. But now, he actually owned some of these. A Ferrari, a Bentley, and a Rolls-Royce Cullinan promised by his future father-in-law. He was already 2/10 of the way there. He happily wasted an hour poring over the gorgeous photos, the technical specs, the stories behind the cars, and the tales of their owners. It turned out reading an instruction manual wasn't boring at all. If you were handed the manual for a toaster, you'd be annoyed. But the manual for a hypercar or a high-end piece of jewelry. Suddenly, the tiny font and convoluted instructions weren't a problem. Finished, Leo stood up and stretched, his mind feeling refreshed. But then he sensed someone watching him and quickly straightened up. Luckily, he was only 21. No tattoos, didn't smoke, wasn't hungover, and was dressed neatly. His hair was a reasonable length, and he had a decent aura about him. In the context of a library, he was photogenic from any angle. Still, most people in the library were actually reading. Even though his character, Silas, had blown up, it wasn't like he had stalkers analyzing his daily routine. He also had the university to thank for that. Getting onto campus and into the library required an application process, and everyone who entered had their information on file, which encouraged good behavior. Besides, the campus was currently buzzing about all the other A-list celebrities coming for the concert. Silas was just a rookie in comparison. Leo noticed someone filming him, a younger female student, probably a freshman. He didn't shy away or run. He just calmly returned his book and walked out of the reading room. The student had indeed been filming. She immediately sent the video to her dorm's group chat. Video of a boy reading in the library. OMG, I actually saw him. Silas in the flesh. The rumors that he goes to our school are true. He was reading so intently, I didn't dare disturb him. It was like Silas time traveled to the present day to be a college student, just quietly reading. He looked so focused, and he was smiling a little. I think I saw a faint dimple on his right cheek. He must have read something funny. When he finished, he stood up to stretch, but I think he saw me filming. I felt so guilty. He glanced at me, but didn't say anything, just finished his lazy stretch and returned the book. Watching him read felt just like watching the tea master brew tea, so calm, so serene. But when he noticed me and instinctively looked over, my heart skipped a beat. For a second, I totally felt that villainous energy from the show. After posting the video, she spammed the chat with a torrent of messages. Was it wrong for me to film him secretly? But the lighting was perfect, and the background was so good, and I was still crying over the finale, and then I saw him in real life. I couldn't help it. I'm guilty. Please don't share this outside the group. Another roommate replied. Too late. I already sent it to my high school friends group chat. Leo returned his book and left the library. Instead of heading back to his dorm, he walked toward the private kitchen at the Honors College, which was conveniently located on the way. Carter Hayes had slept until lunchtime. He was a man who appreciated comfort. He had set himself up in the nicest room available. As long as there were no room inspections, he'd stay there. If there was one, his dorm was just a short walk away, and a quick text from a roommate was all he needed. The curtains were motorized. He pressed a button on the remote, and the double-layered, floor-to-ceiling drapes slowly parted. The window offered a view of the distant lake and the grassy banks, as well as the nearby private kitchen. Though it was in the foreground, the old, traditional architecture of the restaurant was quite beautiful. But as the curtains opened this time, something glinted, catching the light and blinding him for a second. He rubbed his eyes, shifted his position, and then let out a string of curses. He bit his tongue in envy, the sharp pain doing little to quell his shock. Just last night, his uncle had been lecturing him, telling him to learn from that foster kid, how down-to-earth and serious he was, how humble his attitude. Carter had always thought only his parents would compare him to other people's kids. His uncle was usually the cool one. How could meeting this guy once turn his own nephew into a second-rate citizen? "Uncle," Carter had asked suspiciously, "you don't have a crush on him, do you? He has a girlfriend. Don't even think about it." That question earned him an angry smack from his uncle. And this was supposed to be the model of a serious, down-to-earth, humble student? Who the hell had 4 top-tier supercars parked outside their door? A Bentley and a Ferrari were flashy enough. But now there was a Lamborghini and a McLaren. It was obscene. That Lamborghini Revuelto was his dream car. He looked it up recently and found out it somehow qualified for a federal EV tax credit. A whole $1,500 off the dollar one. $2 million base price. He desperately wanted to take advantage of that sweet government handout. After telling his uncle he was going to study in Germany, Julian Jou's mind had been buzzing with excitement. But now, a vague sense of unease was creeping in, a feeling that something wasn't quite right, though he couldn't put his finger on it. Any such feelings were instantly vaporized by the arrival of the new cars. He was ecstatic, like a toddler on a family trip who had just received his favorite worn-out security blanket in the mail from his grandparents. Just then, Jordan and Sean arrived, both stopping short with the same 2-word exclamation. Holy shit. It seemed to be the universal trigger response for young men seeing a lineup of hypercars. Jordan spotted Piggy getting out of the Lamborghini and immediately threw an arm around his shoulder. From this moment on, you are my brother. Bro, can I please drive this? Sean couldn't resist raising his camera and snapping several photos. The visual impact of the cars lined up together was overwhelming. No wonder supercars were always paired with models. Their low height was perfect for a tall, leggy woman to lean against for a photo. The golden ratio, where a woman's leg length is approximately 0.618 times her height, meant that for a 5'7" model, her legs would be about 41 inches long, perfectly aligning with the car's 45-inch roofline. The visual was stunning, legs taller than the car. The iridescent bodies of the top-tier supercars were gorgeous, futuristic marvels of color and design. The hues were richer and more vibrant than you'd see anywhere else. Juxtaposed against the ancient, traditional architecture of the private kitchen, they created a striking contrast, the past versus the future, rustic history against sleek science fiction. The photos had a strange, compelling mood. Still, Sean felt his photos were missing something without Leo in them. It was lunchtime, so they decided to eat first. Leo's assistant, Lou, who had been busy all morning, returned just in time to snag a free meal. A good workhorse, he reasoned, deserved good fuel. He hadn't expected to come back to a supercar show. "Mr. Vance, what are you doing?" he thought, his heart sinking a little. "Where's the Cullinan? If you don't hurry up, you're going to lose your spot. Our young boss might not even want it anymore." His first practical thought, however, was to contact the construction foreman for the villa and tell him to add more spaces to the underground garage. He didn't know the full extent of his young boss's background, but it was clearly substantial. That Dylan Sloan from D.C. had come for a short visit and left behind a horse ranch, a plot of land, a top-tier racehorse, a Bentley, and a pile of gifts. And now this kid, Piggy, also from D.C., had been here for only a few days and had already sent 2 hypercars. Even Lou, who had seen his fair share of wealth, had never witnessed 4 top-tier supercars parked side by side like this. He managed to snap a quick selfie with the cars before reluctantly heading inside to eat. Sean sent the photos to their dorm group chat. Alex, who hadn't been able to make it, replied with 2 words, "Holy shit." The expletive content of the day was off the charts. They need to eat more meat to balance their diet. Alex was too busy to come over. He'd been summoned by the city for a working lunch. Seeing the gleaming cars, he was genuinely envious. When he came over that night, he was determined to touch every single one of them. Lunch was prepared by Chef Wu. With Leo present, the chef was on his A-game. Lou thought Chef Wu's cooking had improved dramatically. He must have been holding back before. Now that he had a stake in the business, his skills had suddenly leveled up. It also seemed that the old chef had picked up a few things from the young boss, as his dishes tasted remarkably similar to Leo's. Chef Wu himself felt it was because the young boss hadn't held anything back and had generously taught him everything. He knew he couldn't get complacent. He had only learned a few dishes so far. With his beloved cars here, Piggy could barely focus on his food. For a man who lived to eat, the sight of a race car could make him forget even his own life. After lunch, he eagerly called out to Leo, "Leo, my man, let's go for a spin. I looked it up. There's a winding mountain road around here with decent conditions. We can take it to the summit, warm up the engines a bit." Leo had just been reading about supercars in the library and was definitely intrigued. So, after the meal, Piggy took Jordan and Leo took his personal photographer, Sean. Leo chose the silver-gray Lamborghini Rivuelto. It felt both flashy and coolly detached. Piggy mentioned that after all the customizations, the car cost over $1.5 million. The Lamborghini's scissor doors opened, a classic movie moment that everyone recognized. Leo felt a flutter of excitement, but kept his composure. His bluffing skills had improved. Even if he was squealing on the inside, his face remained a mask of calm. Sean was also excited. Sinking into the passenger seat felt like being swallowed. He adjusted his camera and began carefully filming the interior. Piggy gave Leo a quick rundown of the controls. Anyway, it's simple. You're an experienced driver. You'll get it. I'll go first, you follow me. Got it, Leo said. Spoken like a true expert, Leo thought wryly. You all know this, so I won't bother explaining. And what about those of us who don't? Thankfully, Leo had done his homework. It wasn't that he didn't know how to drive, but he was unfamiliar with the specific buttons and controls. The steering wheel felt heavy, resistant. Piggy shot off in the McLaren. It took Leo a moment to figure out how to close the door. Once he did, he was sealed in a strange new space. The view was completely different from a normal car, lower to the ground, almost like a child's perspective. He could see every pebble on the road. The engine roared to life, a powerful, visceral sound that made his heart vibrate. Leo drove seriously, doing his best to keep up with Piggy. He managed to stay on his tail, which wasn't surprising since he had acquired the skill directly from him. Up ahead, Piggy was blown away. Leo was the real deal, sticking to him like glue, mirroring his turns perfectly. It was uncanny. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. They reached the summit before the cars even felt properly warmed up. To really let loose, they'd need a professional racetrack. Still, they had made it to the top. The four of them climbed out of the cars, two of them looking pale and unsteady. It was the low ride height, the different perspective, and the constant turns. Jordan felt a wave of relief. He was glad he only talked a big game about racing. If he actually tried it, the second child his parents had worked so hard to raise might just end up as a statistic. It was cool, incredibly cool, but his legs were jelly. His calves were still trembling. Sean had been focused on filming, but he didn't feel great either. His trust in Leo kept him from panicking. He knew Leo wouldn't push it if he couldn't handle it. There was also a sense of shared risk. If Leo wasn't scared, why should he be? But his legs still buckled a bit when he got out. He was thrilled, though. The footage he'd captured from the unique angles was amazing. It was so cool. No wonder Hollywood blockbusters loved car chases and spent fortunes on them. You couldn't understand the feeling until you were inside, every nerve ending tingling. The footage was going to look incredible, assuming it didn't make viewers motion sick. He'd have to ask a senior editor for tips on cutting together non-static shots. He loved the challenge of shooting in new environments and from different perspectives. Leo's legs were a little weak, too, and this was after his core strength had been significantly boosted. No wonder the system had given him a lower body stamina buff. It was a purely technical requirement. On every turn, he'd worried about braking too late and launching them off a cliff to meet their maker. The strain on his heart was immense, the pressure intense, but it was also exhilarating. The adrenaline rush sharpened his focus tenfold. He felt like he could solve a complex math problem in that state of mind, if only it lasted. The moment he stopped, exhaustion hit him. While driving, he'd felt a surge of power, the engine's roar a soundtrack to his own body's roaring effort. Now, looking out from the summit, he felt a sense of peace. This wasn't the same mountain where he and Stella went to make out. That one was close enough to walk to, and the temple on top was more of a small hermitage run by a single, non-monastic caretaker. This was a major site, with several grand halls and robed, clean-shaven monks. The four of them didn't go inside, just stood on the viewing platform, gazing at the scenery below. During their freshman year, they had hiked up here, a journey that took hours. Back then, they had nothing but time and energy. They'd even pulled an all-nighter on the mountain to watch the sunrise. Now, in their senior year, they'd arrived with the press of the accelerator. It was a shame Alex wasn't there to see it. Piggy was in high spirits, back in his element. The mountain was quiet. The post-lunch lull wasn't a peak time for visitors, who usually came in the morning. Besides, the monks had to eat too. There was a natural spring where visitors would fill water bottles after praying. Leo and his friends had done it before, but Jordan, ever the skeptic, had used a small water testing device. The total dissolved solids, TDS, reading was around 200, about the same as city tap water, which needed to be boiled before drinking. The spring was likely just hooked up to the municipal water supply. For comparison, The water on campus was a relatively pure 80, and the bottle of water they brought with them read a TDS of 1. From the summit, the view was breathtaking. The platform was paved with tiles depicting celestial beings. In the distance, the city sprawled below, and beyond that, they could just make out the coastline. After a while, they decided to take some pictures. People always seemed to spread their arms wide for photos in high places, as if some primal avian instinct kicked in, telling them they could fly. Leo snapped a few shots, then they flagged down a young monk to take a group photo. Standing there with Leo and his roommates, Piggy felt a wave of nostalgia. It felt like he was back in college. The friendships then were so simple. It didn't matter what your family did, who your parents were, or what connections you had. You just hung out, laughed, and yelled together without a second thought. When Piggy saw the photos Leo had taken of him, he let out another series of appreciative two-syllable curses. Not only was Sean a great photographer, but Leo had somehow managed to capture him looking even better, dashing, confident, and full of bright-eyed optimism. He didn't even look chubby. He looked roguishly handsome. He immediately made it his new profile picture. It was so much better than his old photos posing next to his cars. Those always made him look like he was just borrowing someone else's ride, like he didn't belong. Leo had captured his true essence, pure, unadulterated handsomeness. In the group chat, Alex saw the photo and envied them. But you couldn't have it all. He was focused on his career. I'm gonna make it to the top, he thought. Alex, shrimp emoji doing a tantrum at Sean. Can you Photoshop me in? Thanks. Jordan, I'll pee you into my arms. Sean, roger that. Dog head emoji. The wind picked up, so they didn't linger. The drive down was even more thrilling than the drive up. By the time they got back to the private kitchen, Piggy's legs were weak, but he was buzzing with excitement. You don't get tired doing what you love. He didn't even rest, heading straight to the bar to continue his mixology lessons with Jordan. You know, Piggy, Jordan said, you should really be in the kitchen learning to cook. Why? We have a chef at home. I don't need to, Piggy replied. Wait until you're studying abroad, Jordan said sagely. You'll realize that good cooking skills will make you a king. When you invite a girl over, don't tell her your cat can do a backflip. Just tell her you know how to cook. Forget girls. Guys will be lining up at your door. The private kitchen was exceptionally busy that evening, and not just with paying customers. A large crowd had gathered outside, making it difficult for guests to get in and out. When there were only 2 supercars, it had already been a spectacle. People would pretend to be passing by and stop to gawk. The restaurant was at the far end of the student strip, by the river, not a place you'd normally just wander past. But with 4 cars, it was a full-blown event. One person would stop and stare, and soon, a crowd would form. There was safety in numbers. It was less embarrassing to stare when everyone else was doing it too. College students, with their flexible schedules, were particularly susceptible. A single call could bring out an entire class. The crowd was becoming a problem. Alex, weary from a long day, had just arrived to see the commotion. It was one thing to be popular, but a large idle crowd could quickly turn into a public disturbance. Without even taking a moment to rest, he sprang into action. He put up a sign, free drink with student ID. He had Cal organize a single file line. They would serve hot, spiced honey ginger tea, 1 cup per ID. This way, people weren't just loitering. A line was manageable. A mob was a liability. The excuse of gawking at luxury cars was a bit awkward, but a promotional giveaway was perfectly normal. They weren't checking IDs too carefully, just enough to prevent people from getting back in line. Leo was assigned to brew the tea. Jordan and Alex handed it out, while Cal kept the line orderly. The crowd immediately thinned out and became more organized. People could still get a good look at the cars and even snap a photo after getting their drink, but it was all done in an orderly fashion. Alex was a natural public servant. He had taken a potentially chaotic situation and turned it into a brilliant marketing opportunity. The restaurant's prices were far beyond a typical student's budget, but students were a key demographic. If you could win their loyalty now, you could have their business for life. It was the same strategy employed by tech moguls like Steve Jobs. He hooked them in college with iPods, then sold them iPhones after graduation when they were just starting their careers, and eventually, they'd fill their homes with Apple products. You could call it shearing the same sheep for a lifetime, or you could call it lifelong customer service. So, on a cold winter night, the students lined up, flashed their IDs, and received a steaming cup of honey ginger tea. It was delicious, far better than the syrupy bubble tea they usually bought, and it was free. The tea was Leo's creation. Dr. Shun had given him a simple recipe, and with his culinary buff activated, the result was both tasty and effective. Even the hardiest student would feel the chill on a windy night by the lake. One sip of the hot, fragrant tea warmed them from the inside out. One girl, who was on her period and had been dragged there by her boyfriend, found that her cramps miraculously disappeared after a cup. The experience would be etched in their memories. For supercars gleaming under the lights, a cup of the best ginger tea they'd ever tasted, and a photo with an unforgettable backdrop. They would remember that the private kitchen's food must be incredible if even the free tea was this good. One day, when they had the money, they would come back for a meal. Sean was still filming, capturing Leo as he brewed the tea. They rotated who was serving outside, since it was getting chilly. When it was Leo's turn, with Piggy, a bona fide third-generation heir, standing next to him, Leo's 8. 5 out of 10 good looks were somehow elevated to a solid 9. With Leo handing out the tea, the line grew even longer. Photos and posts started popping up online. Thanks to Sean's relentless 360-degree filming, Leo was now effortlessly photogenic. There were no bad angles. He didn't fidget, scratch, or pick his nose. Years of being in front of Sean's camera had ironed out all those little ticks. Even though Silas had no official promotions, the candid photos and videos of him that surfaced online created even more excitement. There was a natural, unexplainable appeal to leaked or secretly filmed content. It felt more authentic, more thrilling. That's why some horror movies even faked a found footage style. Silas is so handsome in his everyday life. So natural. This isn't my boyfriend, is it? The boyfriend of my dreams. The way he talks, the way he smiles, the way he doesn't smile. That mix of aloofness and kindness. How can one person be both? So hot. I'm licking my screen. I wish I could fly over there. I want to drink the ginger tea that my dear Silas brewed himself. In your dreams. It's only for Northwood State students. They're so lucky. That night, a new hashtag unexpectedly started trending. Hashtag Northwood State students are so lucky. President Julia Grant was at home, marveling at her good fortune. While other universities were trending for plagiarism scandals, student misconduct, or food poisoning outbreaks, Northwood State was consistently in the news for something positive. And once again, it was all thanks to Leo Foster. She remembered that the upcoming Galaxy of Stars University concert was also his roommate's doing. She had even received a formal directive from the Board of Trustees instructing her to cooperate. She decided then and there to plaster the campus with posters of her own students. At the concert venue, Leo's poster would get the prime, largest spot. This was her school, after all. She wasn't just cooperating. She was taking the lead. His photo would be front and center, with the university motto hanging right above his head. Morning. Leo woke up in his Spartan, non-air-conditioned 4-person dorm room. It was still quiet. Jordan was snoring. Alex seemed to be grinding his teeth. A squeaking sound, like stressed metal, emanated from his bed. Sean's bed was empty. Had he already gotten up? Leo got out of bed, grabbed his towel, and went to the communal bathroom. No Sean. When he came back, Sean still wasn't there. He remembered that Sean used to like going up to the roof, often with him. It was a kind of loser solidarity. They'd go up there to vent, dream about the future, and force-feed themselves enough motivational fluff to get through another day. On instinct, Leo headed for the roof. Sure enough, Sean was there. The early morning air was chilly, but at least there was no wind. Sean, Leo called out. Sean turned. What are you doing up here? Leo asked. The concert is at night, right? I'm testing out how to do the live stream in the dark, figuring out the angles, the lighting, and the feel of an outdoor broadcast. Leo sighed. You're working too hard. What time did you get up? I'm about to go for a run. Want to come? Or are you going to get some more sleep? 5. I'll run with you. I can't sleep now anyway. Leo helped Sean pack up his equipment, which was cold and damp from the morning dew. You're an idiot, Leo said. It's freezing up here. You could have just gone to the end of the hallway to practice. I was worried someone would see me squatting near the bathrooms with a camera and think I was a pervert, Sean muttered. Fair point. They headed downstairs. Leo went back to the dorm, drank some honey water, and then he and Sean left together, moving quietly so as not to wake Alex and Jordan. Sean hadn't slept well. The night before, Piggy had sent him a message asking what his favorite color was, followed by pictures of Jeep Wranglers in red, white, black, yellow, army green, and slate blue. Sean's heart had hammered against his ribs. Is he asking me to pick one? They all looked amazing. How could a Jeep not look amazing? Big, brawny, with thick, rugged tires. It was the epitome of tough. Every color was great, but if he had to choose, he would inevitably pick black. Even though the slate blue was unique, the yellow was bold, the red was cool, and the white was flashy, he would still choose black. The cautiousness was ingrained in him. Even if he could own a Wrangler, he'd still worry that a bright color was too ostentatious. Black was safe, so he told Piggy he liked black. Honestly, when Piggy had first arrived, he'd been friendly with everyone, but it seemed to look right through Sean, as if he didn't exist. He'd tossed, and turn all night, thrilled and anxious. It felt like the day his family got their first home computer. His dad brought the bulky tower home, and Sean had helped him carry it inside, feeling a mixture of pride and excitement. That computer, with its dial-up connection, was their portal to a modern world, a bridge out of their rural town that felt 20 years behind everything. The memory still made him smile, tinged with a little melancholy. Not having slept well, he'd gotten up early. Sean knew all this was happening because he was useful, and even then, not that useful. Ultimately, it was all because of Leo. Leo's godfather was some big-shot doctor, the kind that treated top government officials. They were probably all trying to get on Leo's good side. It was complicated, but Sean knew it had very little to do with him personally. Of course, his TikTok account was part of it. He had to be doing something to get noticed in the first place. When a person like him received such an expensive gift, his first reaction wasn't just joy, but anxiety about how to repay the kindness. So he got up early to work, feeling like he'd been given far more than he deserved. He was a classic case of imposter syndrome, always worried he wasn't good enough and needing to work harder to justify his place. He and Leo walked to the track where Professor Reed did her morning exercises. She greeted Sean with a smile. "You're looking sharp this morning, young man." Sean blushed. It seemed his invisibility cloak was still working. Professor Reed had forgotten his name again. Seeing Leo, she grinned. "I saw you went for a drive in a sports car yesterday. Look good. Be safe." Professor Reed didn't follow many accounts on TikTok, but the Roommate Chronicles was one of them, along with several botany channels and a sketch comedy account that made fun of academic life. She'd seen the video of Leo in the supercar and thought, youth is wonderful. She was a rational person, but she had a romantic side and appreciated seeing young people try new things. "I was a little nervous while driving, but it was an incredible feeling," Leo said. "My focus was so intense, for a second I had the delusion that if you'd given me a math problem right then, I could have solved it." Professor Reed let out a hearty laugh. "Yes, that was definitely a delusion." Sean filmed silently. Leo just kept getting better and better. Now he was warming up with the professor every morning. After their warm-up, Leo went to the student strip to get Moose, then brought him along for the run, with Sean filming. The daily exercise was paying off. Moose was looking less like a furry barrel and more like an actual dog. His bald head, however, was likely a genetic trait they could do nothing about. Moose himself had become a minor celebrity on campus, a certified internet sensation. The female students loved him, but he was picky. He was dismissive of girls who were too thin, i.e., small-chested, turning his head away with a sniff. But if a more well-endowed woman approached, he would happily flop onto the ground for belly rubs, his tail wagging furiously. After a long and tiring journey, they had finally arrived. His godmother, Grace Shun, was already exhausted. People often experienced altitude sickness going from low to high altitudes, but the reverse could also cause a kind of oxygen intoxication, leaving one feeling languid and lethargic. They had a simple lunch at the house. The family's longtime housekeeper had come over earlier to air the place out, changing the linens and getting rid of the musty smell of a house left empty. She had prepared a few of Grace's favorite home-cooked dishes, including grilled pork belly wrapped in perilla leaves. The flavor was unique, and Leo enjoyed it. The perilla leaf had a fresh, slightly spicy taste that many people found unusual. The palate is a creature of habit. Flavors from childhood leave a lasting imprint. Grace had loved this dish as a child and still did, but it had to be made just right, the way they did it back home. The rich, fatty pork belly was perfectly balanced by the slightly bitter, pungent leaf. The housekeeper had been with the Shun family for over 20 years. Good help was hard to find, and the family had ensured her loyalty by even arranging a job for her daughter. Grace's heart wasn't strong, so she needed to rest before visiting her family. Shelley, however, was young and full of energy. When she heard Leo was going to the horse ranch that afternoon, she couldn't wait. She rushed through her meal, quickly showered, and changed into a more practical outfit. It was a strange human quirk. Even after a short 2-hour trip, arriving in a new place made you feel the need to wash away the journey and change clothes before you could truly relax. After lunch, Leo said goodbye to his godparents and took Shelley to the ranch. Sean volunteered to drive, so Leo and Shelley sat in the back. On the way, Leo learned that his cousins spoke Arabic. "That's such a niche language. You're amazing for learning that, Shelley," Leo said. Shelley beamed, pleased that her efforts were appreciated. "I had a roommate in college who was Muslim, and she taught me." The landscape outside was a lush green, a stark contrast to the arid cities of the Northwest. Even in winter, this region was verdant. She mentioned that her father was busier than ever lately, bursting with more energy than she had. He looked like he could work for another 30 years. Leo thought about it. Dr. Shin certainly was dedicated. He answered Leo's endless stream of questions every day, which, even without a time dilation buff, must have taken him a couple of hours. The medical profession was one where age was an asset. A doctor's career could be very long. The conversation flowed easily between them. Shelley sometimes chatted with Sean, who was sitting in the front, asking about his hometown. "There's a new noodle shop downtown," she told him. "My dad says it tastes the most like the food from back home. You should try it sometime." Sean nodded. He rarely ate noodles when he was away from home. It wasn't that he disliked them, but nothing ever tasted quite like what he was used to. He'd rather just have rice. The ranch wasn't far, located on the outskirts of the city. The location was stunning, a perfect blend of grassland, lake, and forest, with a sheer cliff face in the distance. A skilled photographer could make it look like a foreign country. Even Prince Fahd had been pleasantly surprised on his visit. He was the type who worried about the lack of luxury abroad, practically wanting to bring his own gold-plated toilet with him wherever he went. But the scenery here was enough to make him tolerate the tiny five-star hotel suite. When Leo arrived, Lou was already there. Prince Fahd had brought his usual entourage of bodyguards and attendants, as well as two companions, a red-haired, red-nosed British man and a Japanese man. As Leo approached, he saw the Japanese man inspecting Monarch's feed, fearlessly reaching into the trough to grab a handful of hay and sniffing it intently. He was trying to secret away a sample to analyze its composition. Business was business, after all. Why pay when you might be able to steal the secret for free? The videos of Monarch's improving condition had already attracted attention in the racing world, but many were skeptical, attributing it to China's famed video editing skills rather than genuine improvement. Prince Fahd, however, had vouched for its authenticity. A man of his wealth had no need to lie. His money was his credibility. And so, others had come sniffing. If this was real, it would be an earthquake for the entire industry. They needed to know if it was a fluke specific to Monarch or a method that could be applied to all horses. The Japanese man had timed his visit for Monarch's feeding time. He smelled the distinct aroma of herbs in the feed. Seeing the owner arrive, he pretended to be petting Monarch, only to get a face full of feed spat at him by the horse. It wasn't a sophisticated espionage tactic, but it was direct and effective. If he could figure out the formula, he could save millions and potentially make billions. It was the business equivalent of stealing a company's seal or picking a lock. Seeing Leo, the Japanese man noted how young he looked, even younger than in the videos. But he carried himself with an air of importance. Rumor had it he was on good terms with the legendary team master, Mr. Mikami. The man discreetly wiped his hands, tucking the residue from under his fingernails into his pocket before assuming a gentlemanly posture. Leo didn't suspect a thing. Even if they analyzed the feed, it would be difficult to replicate. The hay itself was a kind of traditional medicine. Many of the plants horses ate, like alfalfa, were also used in herbal remedies. The complexity of traditional medicine was that ingredients could be identical, but their effects could vary wildly. Liu introduced the guests. The Japanese man, Fujiwara Nanichi, was the president of some business association and was apparently important enough to have had tea served to him by Mr. Mikami himself. He was lean and sharp. The red-haired man was a Mr. Brownell, the manager of a prestigious British racetrack. Brownell looked at the ranch with disdain. In his eyes, it was merely a place to keep horses, not a professional facility, though he conceded the environment was nice. The weather took a turn that afternoon. Just when the sky should have been lighting up with a beautiful sunset, a cold winter rain began to fall. Leo was supposed to have dinner with the foreign guests, but he had already made plans with his godfather. The meeting was cut short. Fujiwara and his group were eager to leave anyway. He wanted to see what his little sample would yield. Prince Fahd and Brownell knew what was going on, but such was the world of business. Why not save a few million if you could? The money Fahd saved could be squandered on something else later. Since he was short on time, Leo didn't go back to campus. He went straight to his place at Clearwater Cove to shower and change. He texted Stella to let her know he was bringing Shelley and Sean over. Stella replied, bunny hiding shyly emoji okay. This was the first time they had brought anyone else to the apartment. The decor was clean and modern, perfectly suited for a young, childless couple. The first thing Shelley and Sean saw upon entering was the massive portrait of Leo hanging in the living room. Shelley was speechless. Sean was speechless. Thankfully, it was a duplex with a high, vaulted ceiling, which made the space feel larger. But still, who hangs a giant self-portrait in their own living room? It was so narcissistic. Did he walk in every day, look at himself, and sigh, God, I'm handsome? Leo saw their expressions and knew what they were thinking. It was true. When it was just him and Stella, it had never felt weird. It was a gift for Stella, he explained. She's the one who hung it there. The truly awkward part was that Victoria Vance had a nearly identical painting in her home, one she had paid a small fortune for. Thinking about it made Leo feel a pang of sympathy for Richard Vance. Leo told Shelley and Sean to make some tea and wait while he showered. Shelley enjoyed tea, having the time and means to appreciate it. Sean, despite having been around Leo for a while, still couldn't really tell the difference between good tea and great tea. He felt awkward just sitting there. Even though Shelley was beautiful, his mind drifted to the formidable Hannah Chun. He wouldn't feel so out of place sitting with her. She'd just pour him a huge mug of tea, and that would be that. Sean bowed his head and focused on editing his video. He carried his laptop and camera everywhere, a habit of constant work. Meanwhile, far away on a film set, Kate received a message containing what was purported to be a major scoop on Silas. It was a photo of Silas with his arm around a slightly older woman, her face blurred out. The sender claimed to have a full set of photos for sale. Cade recognized the background as an airport. What kind of scandal could happen at an airport? He remembered his last attempt to stir up trouble, spreading a rumor that Silas was a sugar baby. Not only did it go nowhere, but a variety show gig he'd had lined up was mysteriously given to someone else. There are no coincidences in this industry. You reap what you sow. Back then, when Cade was a rising star, he was as naive as a college graduate who thought a six-figure salary was a given. Now, the photo was tempting. When Silas was unknown, no one cared if he was being kept. But now that he was a hot topic, this could be damaging. Cade's own show, directed by Ian Shaw, had been a flop, and he was getting slammed for his terrible acting. Luckily, the whole cast was bad, so he wasn't the only one taking the heat. After several recent setbacks, he had learned his lesson. He looked at the photo, deleted the message without replying, and put his phone away. Tarnishing someone else's reputation wouldn't make him more famous. Besides, his agent had warned him that Silas had a powerful background and was not to be trifled with. Most importantly, he wasn't sure if Silas was a sugar baby, but he, Cade, certainly was now. Leaking this would be asking for trouble. He passed, but someone else didn't. The rumors started subtly, as they always do. It would begin with a seemingly innocent post by a passerby, then a coordinated deluge of posts would follow, until it was all anyone could see. It was expensive to make a topic trend, and just as expensive to orchestrate a smear campaign. Sean was too engrossed in his editing to notice the malicious comments trickling in. The replies to their videos were usually positive. Leo paid even less attention. He was a completely hands-off manager, barely even looking at the back end of the account. He finished his shower quickly. Since he was meeting his godfather to visit someone important, he chose to wear a more traditional Chinese-style outfit. His face was still boyishly young, and the classic cut made him look a bit more mature. He assumed it was another one a doctor. Shin's house calls to an old patient. A man is at his most handsome right after a shower, his hair half dry, his face flushed and clean from the steam. As Leo came out, Shelley looked from her brother to the portrait and back again. Okay, he was handsome, but the whole situation was still deeply weird. Hearing that his girlfriend was responsible for the decor only confirmed her suspicion. His girlfriend was a remarkable person with a very unique taste. Sean quickly finished his edit of the afternoon's events. The video's theme was still My Amazing Roommate, so he highlighted Leo speaking fluent English with Prince Fahd and Brownell, and then switching to fluent Japanese with Fujiwara. Being bilingual was impressive enough, but this showcased a whole other level of talent. This was Sean's first time accompanying Leo and DR. Shun on one of these visits. He felt like he was in a movie, with a lead car clearing the way and another car following behind. The traffic seemed to melt away. He didn't even need to look at the GPS. DR. Shun remembered the young man driving. He was his godson's roommate, and he'd seen him at the hospital several times when his mother was admitted. The families of patients all shared a similar look, frantic, exhausted, lost, and a little disheveled. It was hard to maintain a polished appearance in a hospital. If a visitor was always impeccably dressed, with makeup perfectly applied in a new, coordinated outfit every day, it usually meant one of two things. They were either incredibly vain or not particularly concerned about the patient. But seeing the young man now, he looked revitalized. His whole demeanor had changed. When DR. Shun chose an apprentice, he was choosing a son as much as a student. Character was more important than raw medical talent. You could judge a person by the company he kept. If the people around him were flourishing, it meant he had good character and good fortune. And now that Leo's circumstances had improved, he hadn't left his friends behind. When they arrived, the car stopped. Leo wasn't forcing Sean to be a chauffeur. He was a good driver himself. He was bringing Sean along to give him some exposure to this world. But Sean didn't want to get out of the car. "I'll just wait here for you guys," he said. "Just give me a call when you're done. I can get some work done in the car." Leo and Dr. Sean got out. There were people to receive the drivers, but if Sean preferred to wait, that was fine. He didn't feel left out. An introvert's paradise was being left alone in a spacious, warm car with a laptop, instead of having to make small talk. The Rivian was perfect for working in. The seats were incredibly comfortable. He finally posted the live stream announcement. He was nervous. Now that it was out there, it felt like a guillotine hanging over his head, set to drop at the appointed time. Leo and his godfather were led inside to meet their host. As the old saying goes, if your host is wearing a suit, you're a guest. If he's in casual clothes, you're a friend. If he's in loungewear, you're an old friend. Tonight's host was in loungewear. They greeted each other with a handshake and a hug. "Old Sean, Mr. Chandler." From their conversation, Leo gathered that Mr. Chandler had known his godfather back when he worked at a state-owned enterprise. Dr. Sean simply introduced him as an old friend. After the initial greetings, Dr. Sean introduced Leo. "This is my apprentice and godson, Leo Foster. He's a student at Northwood State. A fine young man, Mr. Chandler said with a warm smile. You have a good spirit about you. It's a pleasure to meet you, Uncle Chandler," Leo said politely. While his godfather took Mr. Chandler's pulse, Leo made small talk with their host, who asked him about his experience at the university. Leo sensed he was a high-ranking official. He had a broad, commanding face, and his mouth turned down slightly at the corners when he wasn't speaking, giving him a stern look. He wasn't old, but he carried the weariness of someone who worked tirelessly, a senior version of Alex. The way he sat suggested his back was bothering him, but he was too disciplined to show it. The downward turn of his lips might not have been a sign of a harsh temperament, but the result of years of gritting his teeth through pain. "I'm really enjoying it," Leo replied. "The academic atmosphere is great, my roommates are like family, the professors are dedicated, and the president is incredibly forward-thinking." The conversation turned to President Grant. "Julia Wu Grant, Mr. Chandler said, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "I remember her. A very formidable woman." He then asked Leo about his hobbies. "My hobbies are pretty ordinary," Leo said. "I'm a good cook, I can brew a decent cup of tea, I'm learning traditional medicine from my godfather, so my massage skills are pretty good, and I can paint a little." Mr. Chandler burst out laughing. It was rare to see a young person with such quiet confidence. Then a memory clicked. "Ah, so you're that young man. I've seen your work. Your portrait of Judge Cole. He loves it. The last time I visited him, he had it displayed in the most prominent spot in his study. It seems you're being far too modest." His secretary had briefed him, but Mr. Chandler had been too busy to connect the dots. Just then, Dr. Sean finished his diagnosis. "Mr. Chandler," he said, his tone serious, "I recommend you schedule surgery as soon as possible." Leo's jaw nearly dropped. My godfather, the master of traditional Chinese medicine, is telling him to get surgery? Mr. Chandler's fingers twitched, a flicker of amusement crossing his weary face. He had befriended Shen Zhonglin precisely because of his directness and genuine skill. But still, for the nation's preeminent traditional doctor to spend all this time taking his pulse only to recommend surgery. It was almost comical. "If you can, arrange it soon. I can stay here for a while to help with the pre-op preparations and post-op recovery. It will definitely be an improvement over your current condition. You're in constant discomfort. You can't continue like this." Dr. Sean didn't linger. He had given his advice. The decision was Mr. Chandler's. He and Leo took their leave in less than an hour. On the way out, Dr. Sean mentioned offhandedly that his friend had been born in '66. Leo did the math. He was 59. High-level officials usually retired at 65, but in special circumstances, like poor health, they might retire at 60. After dropping his godfather off, Leo and Sean headed back to the private kitchen. The restaurant was buzzing with energy, a lively, welcoming scene that felt like returning to the real world. Here, things were simple. You worked hard. You ate well. Leo felt himself relax. He even went into the kitchen and made a hot and sour soup. It was the perfect thing for a cold night, scalding hot, with a sharp bite of pepper and the chewy texture of shredded vegetables, tofu skin, and mushrooms. One spoonful would make you break into a light sweat. Stella was there helping out. When no one was looking, Leo snuck a quick kiss. It was thrilling. She was his girlfriend, but in a crowded room, they had to steal moments like this. After the rush was over and they had their own late-night meal, Stella told him she had a gift for him to celebrate him passing his driving test. She had booked out the entire local racetrack for a day. This city, while not a major metropolis, was home to many wealthy factory owners and their science. As a result, it had a national-grade racetrack. Renting the whole place for a day would cost a fortune, easily in the six figures. Piggy, hearing this, was green with envy. He had to beg and plead with his family for every new car. He certainly didn't have the kind of pocket money to rent out a racetrack on a whim. The group started making plans for the next day. The weather forecast looked clear. They all headed back to the dorms, driving this time. Sean drove the Rivian with the 4 roommates. Stella took her Bentley. They parked at the faculty housing and walked the rest of the way. Parking right outside the dorms would be too disruptive. On the way, Leo mentioned his godfather's visit to Alex. Your godfather and godmother treated us to dinner in D.C., Alex said. We should return the favor now that they're here. I can't really eat out right now, Jordan lamented. But if we eat at Leo's restaurant, does it count as us treating them? We'll pay the bill. Of course it counts, Alex said. And know a great spa. We could add on a trip there. A collective whoa went through the group. Was this something a college student should know about? If it's an important guest you don't know well, you take them to a fancy restaurant out of respect, Alex explained, sounding like a seasoned diplomat. But if you're close, you should treat them to the best local food, which isn't always the most expensive. Then you can arrange for something relaxing like a trip to a spa. There's an old bathhouse with a natural spring in the city. The masseuses there are incredible. It's not necessarily cheaper than a fancy dinner, especially if you factor in expensive liquor, but it's a better way to spend quality time and catch up. Jordan was stunned. You're the son of a deputy mayor. How are you more of an expert on this stuff than me, the factory kid? Have you been getting the spa treatment recently, Alex? Leo asked, curious. Alex just chuckled. The group erupted in laughter. Driving the car, even Sean's steering wavered for a second. With no girls around, the conversation quickly devolved in a locker room talk about the specifics of the spa treatment. After the laughter died down, Leo casually asked Alex, are there any major officials in our city with the last name Chandler? Governor Chandler, you mean? Alex replied, you guys don't watch the news? I do sometimes, Sean said, but I don't really memorize the names of politicians. It doesn't seem relevant to my life. I don't watch the news at all, Jordan added. It's useless for a regular person like me. I don't play the stock market or anything. Leo felt the same. Most young people didn't follow politics closely, but now that Alex mentioned it, he had a vague recollection. The problem was that politicians often looked alike in their official photos, all wearing similar suits. The Mr. Chandler he'd met had been in loungewear. He'd heard his godfather call him Mr. Chandler, and had assumed he was a corporate executive. But a corporate exec wouldn't have a police escort. Then again, if they were old friends from 20 years ago, it was plausible that a corporate leader could have risen to this position. A thrill ran through Leo. He kept the realization to himself. This was the first time he had a secret he couldn't immediately share with his roommates. Independence +1. Discretion +1. Just as he was getting ready for bed, he got a text from his godfather. Your Uncle Chandler has decided to have the surgery the day after tomorrow. I need you to be free tomorrow night to come with me. Okay, Leo replied. He had thought the visit might not lead to anything. A master of traditional medicine recommending surgery sounded absurd, but also showed how pragmatic his godfather was. He wouldn't cling to tradition for the sake of it. If surgery was the best option, that's what he would recommend. It was also a testament to the deep trust between the two men. Leo thought about his plans. A day at the racetrack, then reporting for duty with his godfather in the evening. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt a small sense of pride. He had managed to keep a secret. He just hoped he didn't talk in his sleep. Leo Foster's eyes fluttered open. He glanced at the clock, 7:30 a.m. It was rare for him to oversleep. He'd spent half the night willing himself not to talk in his sleep, and now he had no idea if he'd succeeded. A low-level excitement had kept him buzzing, a thrill he couldn't exactly share with anyone. Washington, D.C. was a world away, but here in Bridgeport, Governor Chandler was undeniably the biggest fish in the pond. It was strange. When you saw these powerful people as individuals, they didn't seem particularly superhuman. They had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, just like anyone else. Sure, there were variations in height, skin tone, and intelligence, but they were still fundamentally human. So why did proximity to power feel so electric? Maybe it was because the path to them was so deliberately obscured. They weren't products on a supermarket shelf you could just go and see. Reaching them required navigating layers of gatekeepers, calling in favors, pulling the right strings, and only then, maybe, you get a face-to-face meeting. The cautious deference of everyone around them, the hushed and reverent atmosphere, it all served to crystallize the abstract concept of power into something tangible. It was like the old stories of imperial courts. The women were all from prominent families, groomed from birth to be perfect noble women, only to be sent to a palace to tear each other apart over a man who was probably old and definitely not handsome. They weren't fighting for love. They were fighting for influence, for glory. Leo felt a sliver of that same intoxicating energy had thrown him off his rhythm, making him oversleep. He finally rolled out of bed to the smell of Sean's breakfast run, fresh donuts, and the legendary breakfast bowls from the diner on the student strip. Sean said he'd woken up, seen Leo was still out cold, and figured he'd make the trip. At that moment, Alex Young, the resident old young man's body, was just getting up himself. Jordan was still a lump under his covers, caught in the eternal struggle between the pull of sleep and the siren song of food. Alex was already deep into monitoring his health, acting as if he were planning to live to 100. A political career is a marathon, not a sprint, he declared. It all comes down to who lasts the longest. He religiously aimed for 8 hours of sleep a night. For Jordan, that was just a baseline. He could easily clock 9+ hours without even trying. Lately, Alex spent more time combing his hair in front of the mirror than the rest of the dorm combined, already paranoid about thinning hair. The pressure of dedicating oneself to public service, it seemed, was immense. This morning, however, Alex wasn't rushing out. Learning to balance work and rest is another prerequisite for a long life, he announced sagely, dipping a crispy donut into the thick, savory broth of his breakfast bowl. He declared that not even God himself could stop him from driving a supercar today, though a call from an actual superior might. According to his own career plan, he'd never be able to buy one himself. His parents would never allow it. The only scenario he could imagine was becoming so successful that he'd have a spoiled son who'd demand one, but by then his own heart probably wouldn't be able to handle the thrill. Therefore, hedonism had to be seized while young. The plan was to hit the racetrack that morning. Chef Wu had been the first to veto any idea of closing the restaurant, so a morning excursion it was. The track was safer anyway. The winding mountain road near the old hilltop chapel was a death trap for anyone who wasn't a pro. One wrong move, and you'd be meeting your maker, literally. At the mention of supercars, Jordan shot out of bed, a pale blur of flesh that made them all squint. The guy still slept naked in the dead of winter. Well, except for a pair of briefs from his own fledgling brand, a blatant knockoff of Calvin Klein at 1/10 of the price. The four of them dug into breakfast. Even the introverted Sean had brought his food back to eat with him, still not comfortable eating alone outside the dorm. They all promptly Venmo'd him for their share. It was a habit they kept even as their financial situations had improved. You could gift a friend something worth thousands of dollars, but for daily stuff like breakfast, you paid your share down to the cent. The former was about friendship. The latter was about character. Dipping the donut into the breakfast bowl was an art. It required precise timing. No more than 3 seconds, or it would turn to mush. 3 seconds was the sweet spot, just enough time to soak up the savory broth while retaining a hint of its original crispness. Perfect. Alex mentioned wanting to treat Leo's godparents to dinner, but it was impossible to schedule. Dr. Shin's conference itinerary was packed, with events running late into the evening and only an hour allotted for meals. It was likely a precaution. With so many influential people in town, a casual group dinner could easily be misconstrued as some backroom deal. But his daughter, Shelley, was free, and since the track was already paid for, it would be a waste not to use it. So their group set off a veritable parade. The four roommates, Stella and Jessica, and Hannah Chun, who'd been invited along for the experience. Piggy came, and Shelley too. Leo's assistant, Lou, was dispatched to pick up Shelley. That left 8 people for 4 cars. For the drive, Stella took the Bentley with Leo in the passenger seat, which felt wrong, somehow, and Jessica and Hannah in the back. That left 3 roaring sports cars for Piggy, Alex, Jordan, and Sean. Jordan and Piggy each took a car. Alex, ever the cautious strategist, made Sean drive while he rode shotgun. He didn't want to risk anyone ever getting a picture of him behind the wheel of a supercar. He might be a nobody now, but you never knew what could be dug up in the future. It would be a cruel irony to be falsely accused of corruption when he'd never even had the chance to be corrupt. The weather was perfect, but at 8 a.m., traffic was traffic. Still, a convoy of high-end cars made even a traffic jam a spectacle. A fire-red Ferrari, a bright orange McLaren, a silver-gray Lamborghini, and a pure white Bentley. They turned heads everywhere they went. The Bentley had a stunningly beautiful driver, while the sports cars appeared to be piloted by 2 round-faced guys and 1 lanky one. Meanwhile, Grace Shun had been worried her daughter Shelley would be bored tagging along on the trip, but she was thrilled when her younger brother invited her out. Shelley had returned from the previous day's outing beaming, excited that her Arabic studies had finally come in handy. It was a skill she'd rarely used outside of hypothetical trips to Saudi Arabia, trips her parents deemed too unsafe for her take. Grace recalled, with a private smile, the job posting at her pharmaceutical company years ago. To justify hiring her own daughter, they had added a peculiar requirement to the job description: fluency in Arabic. For a domestic drug company, it was an absurd requirement, but they had made it work. Lou, knowing he was picking up the boss's esteemed elder, was the picture of professionalism, arriving with wet wipes and warm water at the ready. He didn't consider being a driver a waste of his talents. It was a sign of trust. It meant the boss saw him as reliable, discreet, and capable. Leo's internal monologue. It's not that deep. I just don't have any other real employees, and you make a lot of money, so I figured you could handle it. That evening, Leo had plans, so he wouldn't be going back to the dorm. He headed to his place at Clearwater Cove. Stella, Jessica, and Shelley had gone downtown for a shopping spree, a ritual that men were genetically programmed not to understand but divinely instructed not to question. Hannah had to work at the restaurant. The rest of the guys headed back to campus. Leo took a quick shower, planning to catch a nap. The day had been surprisingly draining, and he wanted to be in top form for the evening. You only got so many meetings with people of that caliber. You couldn't show up looking like a strung-out junkie. He was drifting in a hazy state between wakefulness and sleep when he felt someone slip into bed beside him. A familiar scent. He instinctively pulled the person closer and continued to doze. He felt a soft kiss on his lips and reflexively pressed their head against his chest. Later, he mumbled, "Not today. MMM." When he fully woke, Stella was there, nestled in his arms, wearing a simple white nightgown. His arm was completely numb. "I thought you were out shopping. How'd you get back?" Stella shifted, cradling his tingling arm. Shelley got her period and wasn't feeling well, so we came back early. She confessed that, in certain moments, she felt a little insecure. She was normally a supremely confident woman who couldn't care less what others thought of her. But because of Leo, she found herself caring about Shelley's opinion. She had a feeling Shelley and Jessica were closer simply because they talked more. It wasn't that she felt left out. She was the one who did the excluding, never the other way around. When your aura was strong enough, even if everyone isolated you, it felt like you were isolating them. It wasn't anything Shelley did, of course. It was just a matter of upbringing. Shelley's parents were normal people. Her mother, while from a wealthy family, was only a little richer than average, bringing a house into the marriage as a dowry. Her father had started with nothing and worked his way up. They lived a comfortable, upper-middle-class life. Dr. Shin hadn't even told Shelley the extent of their wealth until after she'd returned from studying abroad. She seemed so sweet and naive, he worried she'd be easily taken advantage of. Her upbringing was conventional, in line with the lifestyle of a typical hospital director. That was why Shelley found it easier to talk to Jessica. Jessica, despite being poor, had a wealth of experience from her many part-time jobs. The stories of life at the bottom were fascinating, as long as you weren't the one trapped there by a lack of money. A company barbecue in a sudden downpour, singing cheesy pop songs in the rain. Wasn't that romantic? Holding an umbrella over a boss's head in a storm, a perfect little shield moving with him like something out of a cartoon. Wasn't that funny? When you told them later, they all sounded like charming anecdotes. You just left out the part about cleaning up in the dark, soaking wet, realizing you weren't even getting paid overtime. Jessica always recounted these tales with a gentle, easygoing tone. She worked hard and smiled often. She and Stella were polar opposites. Stella lived the most privileged life imaginable but rarely smiled. They were from different worlds. One was cold and distant, yet money flocked to her. A casual multi-million-dollar investment in a TV show had yielded a fortune she could live on for a lifetime. The other struggled, yet money eluded her. Even a rich biological mother turned out to be an illusion, a soap bubble that popped to the slightest touch. Jessica climbed with bleeding hands, knowing that a moment's rest could send her tumbling back into the abyss. One was bored at the summit, the other fought tirelessly in the chasm. Having Piggy around to learn from Leo had been an unexpected catalyst. In truth, Stella had been learning alongside him. She, too, had once lacked direction like so many rich kids who turn to extreme sports simply because everything else is too easily obtained. But being around Leo, feeling his passion, his drive, seeing the close bond he shared with his roommates, it was like looking into a mirror and seeing a different reflection. She found herself slowly falling in love with life itself. The small, everyday moments weren't so boring after all. If you focused on living each day well, the future would take care of itself. And she found herself smiling more. Leo, oblivious to his girlfriend's profound inner monologue, was just happy to lie there with her, doing nothing at all. In reality, driving the supercar had been physically taxing, and he was more in the mood for some platonic dialogue about philosophy and history. After a while, he got up. He might not be able to satisfy her carnal desires, but he could certainly satisfy her appetite. Stella, don't be ridiculous. Although, watching him drive with such intense focus was incredibly hot. Leo went to the kitchen and prepared the most magnificent instant ramen the world had ever seen, complete with a host of toppings and lightly seared Wagyu beef. Stella helped, peeling 2 cucumbers and diligently following a recipe on her phone to make a smashed cucumber salad. She missed the first step. You weren't supposed to peel them, but the act of working together in the kitchen was warm and intimate, a true highlight of any relationship. They ate the ramen and the slightly too sour cucumber salad together. Stella insisted on doing the dishes, carefully arranging the few bowls in the high-end dishwasher. Leo went to clean up, brushing his teeth again. Thankfully, Stella hadn't added garlic to the salad. He changed into a simple outfit and headed to the conference center where his godfather was staying. A car was waiting at the gate of the administrative college to pick him up, a much more low-key affair this time. Leo and Dr. Shin met Governor Chandler again. Today, he was in a crisp work uniform, still signing documents. He clearly wasn't off the clock yet. At the national level, these people were the ultimate workhorses, on call 365 days a year. The governor finished the document in his hand before acknowledging them. It didn't feel like a power play. There was another tall stack of papers on his desk. A man in his position couldn't just stop every time someone walked in. He'd be working until doomsday. He looked energetic, not at all like someone scheduled for surgery the next day. A secretary handed Dr. Shin a copy of the latest medical reports. Dr. Shin reviewed them, and Leo peered over his shoulder, not understanding most of the terminology. But Dr. Shin, whose hospital was equipped with the latest Western medical technology, a necessary precaution against malpractice suits, understood perfectly. The results are quite good, very optimistic, Dr. Shin concluded. We can use a microendoscopic discectomy or a similar minimally invasive procedure to remove the herniated nucleus. This is the mildest case, and the recovery should be very fast. The old doctor had always thought himself invincible, the steadfast guardian of his wife and daughter. But this was the first time a child from the next generation had put a supportive arm around his shoulder. To feel that he could truly rely on someone younger was unexpectedly moving. He went home in high spirits. A man who usually preached the virtues of a healthy lifestyle, he broke his own rules, found a bottle of bourbon, and poured himself a glass. The burn was sharp, satisfying, full of flavor. Leo returned to campus. The next steps were out of his hands. He felt much calmer this time, having maintained his composure. He was growing. It was like Alex passing his corruption test. Leo had just passed a trial by power. A familiar mechanical voice, silent for some time, chimed in his mind. Congratulations, host, for passing the trial. Success lies in strategy, but is secured by discretion. The host has learned to be shrewd. Reward. Youthful eyes, permanent. Gaze holds a hint of emotion, like the gentle ripple on a lake. Pupils are bright, with a pinpoint of light. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Your direct gaze will appear pure and bright, inspiring goodwill in others. Coincidentally, the video Sean posted that day was of Leo at the racetrack. When he was driving, his gaze was intensely focused, making his eyes appear exceptionally brilliant. Sean had made sure to keep the others out of the shot, with the exception of Piggy, who had promised Sean a Jeep Wrangler for his trouble. It was a very generous promise. Sean had learned not to take himself too seriously. Just because you had a lot of followers didn't mean you had to bare your entire romantic life to them. They didn't really care. What they wanted was the version of a real life you presented. They didn't want to know your past or your future. 1,000 followers have 1,000 different ideas of who you are. If you showed them the unvarnished truth and it didn't match their expectations, they would turn on you in an instant. The video of Leo racing was undeniably cool. When Piggy drove a supercar, he looked like the village idiot who'd just inherited the farm. But when Leo drove one, the reaction was pure, visceral, primal screaming. The kind of cool that made you weak in the knees. Sean had gotten some great close-ups, capturing the intense aura Leo projected when he was focused. It was enough to make even a straight guy question things. When Carter Hayes saw his uncle replaying the video for the 10th time, he cursed under his breath. Pervert. Total pervert. I asked you for backup, not for you to switch teams. The roar of the engine, the blur of the track. Sean could film from any angle without worrying about other people in the shot. The title was simple, Racing with Friends. Meanwhile, The rumors about Silas being a sugar baby had finally started to gain traction. A photo surfaced of Silas at the airport, arm in arm with an older woman. The woman's face was blurred, but her clothes and style suggested she was well past her youth. The photo was cleverly cropped to make it look like they were alone, cutting Sean and Shelley out completely. Soon after the racing video went live, likes and comments poured in. And then, a wave of new, unexpected comments began to flood the section. But it wasn't the outrage the rumor-mongers had hoped for. Instead, it was a unified chorus. Darling, Annie has 16 garages, 3 mansions, and 2 entire buildings in the city center for rental income. What do you think of Annie? From Texas, Silas, you're so handsome. Annie will work 6 jobs to support you. From Florida, Silas, you want to be a kept man? I've got the means. Look at me, look at me. Anything you want, I can give it to you. From Georgia, that old. No, not old lady. That queen with her arm in Silas's. She's a true winner. From Illinois, the comments were overrun. A legion of women was lining up to be his sugar mama. No one was shaming him. No one was shaming the old woman. In fact, most people were jealous of her. The person who had paid to spread the rumor was seething. Where's your sense of morality? Your principles? Aren't you supposed to despise this? Why is everyone fighting to sponsor him? Have your morals been completely obliterated by a pretty face? Aside from a wave of aspiring sugar mamas, there were also his regular fans. And among them were some very sharp cookies. I knew there was a reason the Coleum racetrack was closed to the public today. My friends and I wanted a test drive car, and the manager said it was booked for a private event. I was pissed, wondering what rich asshole was so extra, but now I see it was the Roommate Chronicles. Okay, I forgive him. Looks like our boy is doing well. From California, El Mio at everyone saying Silas is a sugar baby. Do you not see the chubby guy racing with him? That's Piggy. He's a high-level VIP at the Supercar Club. To get that status, you need at least 10 insane supercars to your name. And he calls Silas bro. So you need 10 supercars just to be his lackey. Being his sugar daddy is a whole other level. From New York, so happy to see our roommate growing and getting more handsome. From Illinois, hot. From Texas, this is epic. From Virginia, FYI, a ticket to the F1 track in Austin is $2, $5.80. The poor may exit now. From Texas, I heard this is the most expensive sport in the world. From California, yo at Elon Musk, he's not driving your car. You should at least pay him for an ad. Step up your game. From Texas, can anyone tell me where this track is? I want to go. From Tennessee, he didn't use his turn signal. That's a violation. From New York, Silas is so handsome. So handsome. Silas didn't die. The modern-day Silas is living his best life, free and happy. Seeing this, I am content. It was worth the 2 boxes of tissues I cried. This is the most beautiful reality. From Wisconsin, the traffic to the Roommate Chronicles account was enough to make professional TikTok creators weep with envy. How is it fair that a college student's daily life was this damn interesting? The TikTok algorithm was showering the new account with a monsoon of views. And today, thanks to the sugar baby rumors, his follower count skyrocketed, boosted by a legion of very confident older women and a few opportunistic men who had slipped into the mix. And not a single person condemned him, even though the news headline screamed, kept by a rich old woman. In the actual photo, Silas's expression was perfectly normal as he held the woman's arm. They were laughing and talking, like he was with a family elder. The hit piece was a classic case of picture says one thing, headline says another. In reality, there were negative comments. A paid troll farm had been deployed, posting screeds about immorality, about Silas selling his soul for money, about him being a shameless pretty boy. But for some reason, their comments were only visible to themselves. After a while, they noticed their accounts were being deleted. They understood then. They had kicked a hornet's nest. Someone had bought a trending topic to smear Silas, but the topic didn't last long. Instead, it had mysteriously redirected all its traffic to Sean's account. Somewhere, the person who had paid for the hit piece slammed their keyboard in fury. It wasn't Cade. It was another supporting actor from the Chancellor's Feast who had also gotten a career boost from the show, jumping up at least 2 tiers from obscurity. He felt that Silas had stolen his thunder. All of Silas's glory, he believed, should have been his. Leo only found out he was trending when Adam Wright sent him a message. He took a look. How on earth did they manage to take a picture of him holding a respected elder's arm and make it look like that? It was the quintessential picture of a kept man. They were true artists of photography. They had captured the very soul of the lie. He immediately called his mom. Fortunately, it seemed the smear campaign's reach was limited. His parents weren't in the target demographic. Your dad's asleep, his mom said. He went out drinking with his old buddies tonight. Got drunk, did some singing and dancing. Leo sighed. Right? He could picture it. His dad may have gone from machinist to chef, but back in his factory days, he was apparently the resident song and dance man, the star of every company event. It was as if everyone from that generation was born knowing how to dance. Leo had seen his dad after a few drinks, moving with a joyous rhythm, spinning in circles, his body perfectly in sync with some internal music. His dad might have a stern, dark face, but when he danced, he carried himself with the confidence of an Emirati prince. It was part of why his restaurant did so well. Beyond the excellent braised pork, he was funny and charming. A flock of middle-aged women used to come by every day, buying huge amounts of food just to hang around and chat with him. They only dispersed after his mom started making a daily patrol of the shop. His mom, the former factory beauty, was fierce. She couldn't sing or dance a lick. Her looks did all the work. Leo listened to his mom complain about his dad's drunken dancing, a topic that could easily last an hour, and gently steered the conversation back on track. He told her about his godparents' visit. "Your godmother mentioned it," she said. "She even invited us to come visit, but your dad has to watch the shop. That's not the main thing. We could always close for a few days if we had to. It's just that we can go see them anytime, and they so rarely get a chance to go back home. As long as you have time to spend with them, that's what matters." I asked if they wanted to come here for a visit. It's warmer. They could come after they're done with their business. Don't worry, your dad and I, and your aunt, will take good care of them. I saw someone posted a picture of me picking up my godmother from the airport and said I was being kept by an old lady. A raspy laugh echoed through the phone. "You're just like your uncle. You've been like him since you were little, though you always seemed a bit slower on the uptake than he was." "Mom," Leo groaned. "We've all been watching your TikToks. Be careful driving those cars. Can you even drive one of those with a regular license? They look so low to the ground. Is it uncomfortable to sit in? You look like you were having fun, though." His mom's tone was light. She had no idea the car was his. She just thought he was out having a good time, as young people do. "And your dad saw that video of you talking to the foreigners. He said that Japanese guy doesn't look like a good person." "Dad's right," Leo said. "Oh, by the way, Mom, the school is having a concert in a couple of days. I'll probably be performing. They're going to live stream it, so you can watch." I saw the announcement. "Don't worry, it's all arranged. Your dad and I are treating the whole family to dinner, so we can all watch it together." Leo blushed. All right, his mom was still his mom. After soothing his mother and hanging up, he felt like he'd dodged a bullet. When his dad drank, that was one thing. But when he drank and danced, a man that happy tended to make onlookers inexplicably irritable. Back when he lived at home, Leo knew to make himself scarce and keep his head down during those times. Before bed, he received the tickets from Alex. He looked at the professionally printed text, "Northwood Gives Back, a university charity concert." To think this whole grand affair had started because of a breakfast burrito. The tickets looked incredibly official. Apparently, they were being sold online for over $300 a pop, and scalpers were already getting in on the action. Northwood students could sign up to attend for free, but outsiders had to buy tickets. The profits, of course, would go to charity. Alex, as the mastermind behind it all, was truly impressive. Once this was done, his post-graduation resume would be practically gilded. A professional event planner would struggle to pull off a large-scale concert like this, with major celebrity guests and official backing, marshaling all the necessary resources. Alex was the kind of employee worth $1 million salary. The value he created was 10 times that. But his heart was set on public service. Money couldn't corrupt him. His roommates were living a life of perceived decadence every day, and he was actively participating, treating it like a child preparing for an Antarctic expedition by diligently eating an ice cream cone every day. "You can give these to your godparents and to Stella's parents," Alex said. "These are VIP seats, right up front where the cameras can see them. You might suggest they dress up a bit." "Thanks, Alex." Alex gave Jordan a stack too, for his family or friends. Sean didn't have anyone to invite, but Alex asked anyway. He took one, planning to give it to Hannah. The VIP seats, they heard, were already being scalped for $2,000 each. And that was with the charity theme limiting the price gouging. It was an unavoidable part of the industry ecosystem. For now, Alex had to play by the unspoken rules. One day, when he held the power, he would right these wrongs. He wasn't a wide-eyed idealist. He knew how to prioritize. But organizing this had taught him that some of the world's most unreasonable situations couldn't be solved with just words. The next morning, after a solid night's sleep, Leo woke up on time and went for his run. He had arranged to meet Stella. The weather was beautiful, the sky bright and clear even at that early hour. He drank his honey water, took care of his morning business, and headed downstairs. The dorm RA, just starting her shift, caught him at the door and shoved a bag of cucumbers into his hands. "I grew these myself," she said. "Just pick them, they're fresh. If you can't eat them all, give them away. My niece loves your autograph, by the way." Carrying the bag of fresh, prickly cucumbers, some still with yellow blossoms attached, Leo made his way to Professor Reed's morning workout spot. He offered them to her, and she accepted with a chuckle, telling him to set them aside. She'd take them home for a salad after her exercises. Stella arrived, and they started warming up together. In the past, she would wait for him by the fountain. Now, she had taken a step closer. The university had once again hung a bright red banner over the fountain, which made standing directly under it a bit awkward. Stella had met Professor Reed a few times now and was becoming more comfortable. She greeted her politely and joined the warm-up. As an English major, Stella had never taken calculus, so she'd never had Professor Reed as a teacher. But intelligence is easy to spot. After just a few conversations, Professor Reed could tell the young woman had a sharp, logical mind and was likely quite good at math. There was a video that went viral a while back. At his wedding, a groom smoothly slid into a full, formal kneel before his new in-laws. The internet roasted him for having no backbone. Then it came out that they had gifted him 2 debit cards, a Maybach, and a mansion. Suddenly, the consensus was that his kneel hadn't been nearly reverent enough. Move aside, let a professional show you how it's done. Leo presented 12 small jars of homemade chili sauce, about half the height of a Laogan Ma jar, and 2 VIP concert tickets. In return, he received a Rolls-Royce key. For a second, he wondered if it was one of those fancy lighters and had the urge to flick it. "Thank you, Mr. Vance." "Thank you, Victoria," he said. Even though it was Richard's gift, he knew not to leave Victoria out. Stella had told him her mother was the one who really ran the show at home. Leo understood completely. It was the same in his house. Richard Vance watched the kid, his eyes bright and joyous, practically glowing. Richard felt a pang of envy. He himself could be given a Rolls-Royce now and not feel a thing. His own eyes were perpetually half-lit, shadowed with the burdens of business. He hadn't had that kind of pure, earnest light in his eyes since he was a young man just starting out. The sight was, frankly, a little irritating. "Go on, go play." Richard waved them away, eager to have the image out of his sight. And so, Stella led Leo to the garage. When Leo saw the ice-blue Rolls-Royce Cullinan, the same shade as a Rolex Daytona, he was stunned. It was a machine of steel, yet it projected an aura of crystalline ice. The Rolex itself retailed for over $60,000, but its rarity pushed the second-hand market price to nearly $100,000, and at its peak, even higher. The color immediately reminded Leo of one of his first dates with Stella on that rooftop when she'd playfully told him her underwear was blue. He'd since confirmed that her collection did, in fact, lean heavily towards shades of blue. Sky blue, baby blue, powder blue. The ice blue Cullinan was a work of art. The hood ornament, the spirit of ecstasy, looked from a distance like a forked twig. Up close, it was a small, gilded sculpture of a woman leaning forward, arms swept back like wings. It was said to be worth over $20,000 on its own. Leo had never examined one up close before. He noticed the figure was bent at the waist, rear, and slightly raised. It reminded him of a scene from The Americans, the one where Philip, after a particularly brutal mission, stands alone on a bridge and does a strange, almost bird-like stretch, trying to shake off the weight of what he'd done. The pose was identical. He'd heard it had an anti-theft mechanism. If you try to grab it, the ornament would automatically retract into the hood. The last time Leo had even thought about a Cullinan was when a famous tech billionaire's son had sold his custom pink one for over $700,000 secondhand. Curious, he'd looked it up. Since its launch in 2018, only about 4,000 have been sold in the U.S. The base model started around $710,000, but with a few customizations, the price could easily double. It was expensive in a different way than a supercar. A supercar, no matter how luxurious, felt like a toy, a magnificent fantasy for adults. But the Rolls-Royce felt like a rite of passage. It wasn't a toy. It was a beautiful, mobile fortress. Looking at the color, though, Leo couldn't help but think, wasn't this really bought for Stella? But then again, he already had cars in black, white, and red. Blue would round out the collection nicely. Stella told him to get in and try it out. He obeyed without question. His uncle's words echoed in his head. Sometimes, when your girlfriend tells you to do something, just do it. Don't ask why. If he had refused her invitation to dinner, he probably would have missed out on this. Sliding into the driver's seat, Leo found it even more spacious than the Bentley Bentayga. The seat was so wide 2 people could have fit. But this was Stella's family garage. He pushed the thought from his mind. The leather was incredibly soft, like cashmere, and the deep pile carpets felt plush under his feet. The seat's contours enveloped him perfectly. The Cullinan's tagline was a life to be looked up to. Its name was a reference to the largest, gem-quality, rough diamond ever discovered. The car itself, with its sharp lines and brilliant finish, looked like a man-made jewel. Leo took a moment to just sit there, soaking it in. He was pretty sure Richard and Victoria weren't watching. He leaned over and pulled Stella into a kiss. The sealed, private space was perfect for a little intimacy. After exploring the front seats, they moved to the back. The rear seats had massage functions and footrests. It was a first-class cabin on wheels. You could genuinely live in this car if you didn't want to go home after work. Then again, if you were driving a Rolls-Royce, did you even need to work? Probably. Richard Vance still went to the office. As much as he loved his new ride, Leo knew he couldn't linger in the car all day. This was only his second visit to their home. So after a bit of fooling around in the back, they got out. Based on his experience, Stella was naturally reserved and composed. If he didn't make the first move, she usually wouldn't. Usually. There were rare exceptions, but he hadn't yet cracked the code. So it was on the guy to be a little bold, a little handsy. The reward was a breathless, pliant girlfriend. They walked around the yard for a while, admiring the distant view of the ocean and letting the lingering heat between them dissipate. The scenery was breathtaking, the vista wide and open. He finally understood why powerful people loved their mountaintop and hillside mansions. Partly for security, sure, but mostly for that feeling of looking down on the world, a constant reminder of their elevated status. This place was a true paradise. He lived in the same city, but had never seen this side of it. They say nature is the great equalizer, but that's no longer true. The best views have been bought up, privatized, and turned into mansions or luxury hotels. If you want to see them, you have to pay. He used to think people living in places like this had everything and, therefore, no worries. But now he knew better. Stella had her worries. Victoria had her worries. Richard Vance had his worries. The difference was people without money worried about one thing: how to get it. The rich had a much longer list. The air was getting chilly, so they headed back inside. The view was nice, but the place would be even better in the summer. Leo still wasn't sure why Richard Vance had given him such an extravagant car on their second meeting. During dinner, Leo brought up the trending topic from the day before. Even though Adam Wright had already handled it and there was no negative fallout, he felt it was important to mention it to the people who mattered: his parents, his girlfriend's parents, his godparents. So, he casually told the story as a funny anecdote. I went to the airport to pick up my godmother and her daughter, and someone took a picture and spun a completely fabricated story about it, he said. Luckily, an assistant to a senior figure, my godfather, introduced me to help take care of it. They stopped the rumors and dealt with the people who started them. Victoria nodded. That whole entertainment world is a mess. It's better to keep a low profile. But while we don't go looking for trouble, we're not afraid of it, either. If you ever run into something you can't handle, you can always ask your Uncle Richard. That's what elders are for, to solve problems for the younger generation. Richard Vance. God, I think I'm going to be sick. His insides twisted. Honey, do you have any idea what he's actually saying? The kid is flexing. He's showing off his connections. What kind of assistant can completely neutralize a trending topic in a single day and cut it off at the source? I couldn't even do that. You think you can just throw money at a problem like that? My money is nothing compared to a single word from the right person. Outwardly, Richard just smiled and nodded. Of course, of course. Thank you, Uncle. Auntie, Leo continued smoothly. I don't plan on pursuing a career in that direction anyway. The hype around Silas will probably die down eventually. I'm not short on money right now, and I'm a student first and foremost. I'm not comfortable with that level of constant attention. This morning, Stella and I went for a run, and people were chasing us with their phones. It's not a great feeling. Victoria nodded again, impressed. The boy was so grounded, not at all swept up by the allure of fame and fortune. She knew how chaotic that world was, how quickly the money and the spotlight could make someone lose their way. But Leo was steady. He wasn't greedy for fame or money. That was worthy of encouragement. She knew her daughter had made a significant profit from investing in his show, an eye-watering return, really. The entertainment industry's potential for high returns was matched only by international wire fraud. They chatted as they ate. After the meal, Leo received a little pocket money from Auntie Victoria for his decision to stay out of the celebrity circus. A cool $1,000,000,000. He also learned a useful new fact. While personal accounts have transfer limits, if you use a special security token from the bank's private client division, you can transfer up to $100 million a day. After dinner, there was no need to call Lou for a ride back. Leo had his license now. He could drive the Cullinan himself. He was feeling that pleasant post-meal drowsiness, but he couldn't very well crash in Stella's room. It was only his second visit. He had to maintain some semblance of decorum. Leo politely took his leave, arranging for Lou to handle the car's registration and paperwork later. He was learning that if you felt awkward accepting money or lavish gifts, you could have an assistant or a friend handle the transaction. They could accept it with perfect poise because they were just doing their job. He settled into the driver's seat of the new Cullinan. The visibility was excellent, and the seat supported his back perfectly. Driving a luxury car really did wonders for one's confidence. Leo could suddenly understand how those balding, middle-aged men with potbellies could be so self-assured, so certain they could charm any woman they wanted. With a ride like this, they probably could. Their thinning hair became a badge of honor. Their large stomachs a testament to a life of experience. You could spin any flaw into a virtue. One look at this car, and I just know you're a man of substance. Leo drove to his godmother's apartment complex downtown. The security guard at the gate barely glanced at him, simply waving him through with a crisp salute. It was a nice building in a great location, but it was older from an era before underground parking. Cars still lined the surface streets. Finding a spot was tricky, but a young guard came running over to guide him to a specially reserved space. The guard was probably worried another car would scratch this one, creating a massive headache. It wasn't about deference to the car itself, but to the person who could afford it. That person undoubtedly had more than just the car. They had connections. It was easier to just bow your head from the start. When a handsome young man got out of the driver's seat, the guard's assumption was confirmed: a rich kid. He respectfully watched Leo walk away. Upstairs, Leo found his godmother had company, Paige Kennedy's mother. He recognized her instantly. She was like a full-sized version of Paige, with the same slightly round face and an air of innocent sincerity. Her voice had a girlish, almost babyish quality. She was also impressively buxom, though not overweight. She had kept her figure well. Inside the warm apartment, she was dressed lightly. Leo said hello and handed over the concert tickets. Since Paige's mom was there, he gave them a few extra. Alex had given him more than enough. The ladies were deep in conversation, so Leo didn't linger. He'd had his fill of chatting with aunties for one day. He said he had to get back to school and left. Downstairs, the young security guard was still standing watch by his car. Leo felt a bit awkward. This was when he wished he kept a pack of cigarettes in the car to offer the guy. It was pretty cold out, but the car was brand new. It wasn't stocked yet. If Lou had driven it, it would have been filled with every possible amenity. Verbal thanks felt a little condescending. "Hey, you want me to take a picture for you?" he asked. The young guard's face lit up. "If it's not too much trouble." "Thank you, sir." Leo took the guard's phone and snapped a photo of him standing in front of the Cullinan. The guard was young and thin, a bit lost in his uniform, but he stood at attention like a soldier, a wide, slightly nervous smile on his face. Leo chatted with him for a moment to get him to relax, then took another shot and handed the phone back. The guard was ecstatic. He looked 100 times better than in his profile picture. He looked handsome. "All right, I'm heading out." "Thanks again," Leo said, getting into the car. The guard jogged ahead of him, acting as an escort to guide him safely out of the narrow exit. Leo drove straight back to campus, heading for the restaurant. He planned to take a nap upstairs. A midday rest was crucial. When he pulled up in the Rolls-Royce, even Piggy was green with envy. Holy crap. Jordan was already by the car, poking at the hood ornament, trying to see if it would really retract if he touched it. When Leo woke up, Piggy had finished his soul-searching. He decided to be gracious about it. He wasn't a little kid anymore. Throwing a tantrum after giving someone a gift was just petty. Besides, his senior uncle had promised to buy him an even better car if he studied hard in Germany. So when Leo came downstairs, Piggy greeted him with earnest sincerity. "Leo, bro, I'm transferring the titles for my 2 sports cars to you. I'm going to Germany for school, so I can't drive them anyway, and it's bad for cars to just sit there." Leo stared at him. He remembered Sean saying Piggy was a good guy. He really was. But Leo was still a bit confused. How had a suggestion about studying automotive mechanics morphed into studying abroad in Germany? He knew Germany had the best programs, but Stella had told him it was the toughest country for international students. Easy to get in, nearly impossible to graduate. Had his master persuader buff been too powerful that day? Had he convinced a bona fide slacker to attempt the academic equivalent of climbing Everest? It was like Leo himself trying to become Professor Reed's graduate student. She might accept him, but he'd probably never graduate. "Thanks, Piggy," Leo said. "If you ever get bored over there, you can video call us. We'll always pick up." Piggy laughed heartily. "I can fly you guys out to visit. My mom said she'll set me up in a big house. I'm definitely going to be bored. The whole dorm can come. I'll charter a plane for you." Jordan chimed in. I hear the sausage and beer in Germany are amazing. I'm so jealous you still have the guts to go to school. I have zero desire. Piggy felt a kinship with Jordan. It was like looking in a mirror. Jordan was even more committed to the art of doing nothing than he was. His parents had absolutely no expectations for him. Since he was awake, Leo decided to teach Piggy how to make his signature chicken cake. It was a taste of home, something he could make in Germany when he got homesick. He had Piggy help with the eggs, talking him through each step. Piggy might not be a genius, but he was a surprisingly good student in the kitchen, with nimble hands and a knack for following directions. Meanwhile, Stella was on a mission. She hadn't come back to the restaurant with Leo. She was out hunting for his performance outfit. Leo had insisted his everyday clothes were fine, but Stella knew better. Stage clothes were a different beast entirely. Most celebrities borrowed outfits from major brands, the prestige of the brand corresponding to their level of fame. With so many events, buying a new outfit for each one was financially impossible. The prices luxury brands charged for these one-off event pieces were astronomical, more a statement of status than a reflection of value. So, sponsorship was the default. If Silas, the character, were to request a sponsored outfit, he might get something from an accessible luxury brand like Coach or Burberry, and even that would be a stretch. TV actors, even from a hit show, were at the bottom of the fashion food chain. The hierarchy was roughly TV actors, movie actors, concert performers. Most of the custom clothes Stella had commissioned for Leo were from Mark Davenport's label. Even his kitchen aprons, all discreetly branded on the inside lining. But concert attire was different from daily wear. A well-tailored suit looked great for an important event, but under the intense glare of stage lights, you needed something that popped. You needed sparkle. Months ago, while commissioning clothes for Leo, Stella had seen a design for a stunningly flamboyant outfit. It was perfect for him, but she couldn't imagine an occasion where he'd wear it. The buttons were made of large Tahitian pearls, and the seams were embroidered with a rainbow of tourmaline gemstones. It was unbelievably ornate, a piece of art that would shimmer and glitter under the lights. It was the kind of outfit that required a powerful presence to pull off. Otherwise, the clothes would wear the man. She had always thought Leo's singing voice was incredible. Now he would have a proper stage to showcase it. She told him she would handle the clothes and makeup. All he had to do was show up and sing. He didn't have to worry about a thing. Then again, maybe guys were just naturally more chill about this stuff. If a woman had a concert, she'd be frantically searching for the perfect outfit. Any social event was an excuse to buy new clothes. Right now, Leo, dressed in a chef's coat, was focused on making chicken cake with Piggy. Sean was there, filming diligently. The quiet, domestic act of baking was soothing to watch. He focused on the details, a puff of flour, the browning crust, the focused look in Leo's eyes. The right angle, the right lighting, it could make the aroma seem to waft right through the screen. The moment the cake came out of the oven was pure magic. Piggy took one bite and was conquered. He begged Leo to make more so he could send some to his family via courier service. This wasn't just any cake. He helped make it. He'd cracked the eggs, and there was video evidence to prove it. Since Chef Wu was handling dinner, Leo agreed to make several more batches. He sent them out to his entire network, his godparents and Paige's mom, Stella's parents, Professor Hoffman, Judge Cole, Professor Reed, Miranda Cole, Ms. Miller, President Grant, and Dean Roberts. He kept some for himself, too. The cake was soft and moist, and it paired perfectly with a latte. It was just the right amount of sweet. Since Piggy was hiring a courier to D.C. Anyway, Leo piggybacked on the delivery, sending cakes to old Mr. Preston, Adam Wright, and General Ingram. As for his own Dr. Croft, he'd have to make her a batch of spicy rabbit heads next time. For now, she was on vacation somewhere in Hawaii, and besides, he had his hands full. He made sure there was enough for the restaurant staff as well. Jessica wasn't there that afternoon. She was off giving tennis lessons to the children of the foreign exchange professors, a gig that was quickly expanding to include kids from the neighboring university. It was a decent side hustle that doubled as a workout. Her recent illness had been a wake-up call. Getting knocked flat by a common cold had made her realize how fragile her body was. When the vessel is weak, the soul has to work overtime just to keep it going, terrified that if the shell breaks, the soul will perish with it. Back in the dorm, the guys shared a piece of the strange-tasting beef jerky Leo had received. It was crispy, not like traditional jerky, and coated in sesame seeds. The flavor was a little overpowering. It would probably be good if you were starving, but as a casual snack, it felt like it was missing something. They munched on it while watching Alex model his new suit. Some important people might be there tomorrow night, so we have to look sharp. Alex's suit was clearly expensive. The fabric had a luxurious weight to it, a world away from cheap polyester. It was tailored perfectly. He didn't look like a student at all. With a few more wrinkles, he could easily pass for a cabinet secretary. Leo snapped a picture of him. Against the slightly chaotic backdrop of the dorm room, Alex looked confident and poised, a broad smile on his face. "You guys should dress up too," Alex said. "This is a huge event. It's being live-streamed, and there will be news cameras. We have a professional makeup team. I can arrange for you guys to get touched up if you want." Me. Jordan piped up. "I'm the one who introduced you to the makeup artists, Alex. I'm basically the king of makeup now. I'll do all your faces. For guys, it's just some contouring and filling in the eyebrows to make them look fuller. It makes a huge difference." "Stella's already got me covered," Leo said, "so I can't participate in your bachelor party activities." Alex, Sean, and Jordan in unison. "Get out." They laughed and joked around until lights out. It was a perfectly ordinary night of dorm life, the kind of mundane moment that, years from now, would still bring an involuntary smile to their faces. It was a good night's sleep. Jordan snored and farted. Sean snored. Alex snored and ground his teeth. Leo had no idea if he snored or not. The next morning, Leo woke up feeling like his mouth had stayed closed all night. He'd heard that sleeping with your mouth open could give you buck teeth. Or maybe it was just his latent ape genes finally expressing themselves. He got up and went to the freezing cold communal bathroom to splash his face with icy water. Youth was a resilient thing. His fingers didn't even ache. The floor seemed more crowded than usual. A few students who had been away on internships must have returned. He exchanged greetings with faces both familiar and new. Thank God no one in the men's dorm was shameless enough to walk around filming with their phone. The image of him, yawning and rubbing his eyes while clutching a wash basin, was not one he wanted immortalized. Back in the room, he made himself a cup of honey water. The other guys had started to copy his habit, though it didn't work for everyone. Sean and Jordan couldn't handle it on an empty stomach. But Alex had adopted the routine, and he swore it had done wonders for his morning regularity. Life might not always be sweet, but starting the day with a little sweetness told your brain that it was. After his morning constitutional, he saw Sean was awake, the blue light of his laptop illuminating the sleep in his eyes. Alex was up too, having already changed out of his silk pajamas. Jordan was still dead to the world. No wonder he was so happy all the time. He was living in a state of constant bliss. This morning, Alex was joining Leo for his run. Not because he'd suddenly developed a passion for exercise, but because he wanted to talk. He was constantly self-reflecting and trying to get those around him to do the same. By the time Alex was ready, Sean was already waiting by the door, camera in hand, a true professional. Jordan's head emerged from his cocoon of blankets. "Breakfast bowl. No liver. Thanks." The door closed, and the room fell silent again, save for Jordan's soft snores. He had no fear of being left out. His loyal subjects would go out, exercise, and bring him back food. What more could a king ask for? Sean filmed his usual B-roll, not paying much attention to Leo and Alex's conversation. A shot of their feet, a shot of the sky. The truth was, Alex was a little nervous. His strategy was to be dismissive of the big picture while being meticulous about the details. On the surface, he was just organizing 2 run-of-the-mill campus events, a food festival and a concert. He'd done both in his sophomore and junior years. This time, the scale was just a bit bigger, and more people were paying attention. That was all. But the details, the flow of people, guest experience, fire safety, food hygiene, public transport, parking, had to be perfect. You couldn't have people come all this way just to have a bad time. You couldn't have the vendors lose money. The normally unflappable Alex was, admittedly, starting to feel the pressure. Though he was a devoted future public servant, Alex was also a little superstitious. He felt that Leo had some kind of powerful luck on his side. Maybe his good fortune had just kicked in during his senior year, because everything had been going his way: friends, money, opportunities. And by extension, his roommates were benefiting too. Alex was nervous. He needed to be near Leo to absorb some of that positive energy. Alex looked like a government official out for his morning constitutional. Even his tracksuit was stuffy and old-fashioned. Leo couldn't imagine where he'd found it. When he asked, Alex named the brand. Zegna. Of course. The preferred luxury brand of powerful men over 45, all understated style, no logos, and ridiculously expensive. The 3 of them met Professor Reed. She was in a sleek black tracksuit, her purple-framed, diamond-shaped glasses adding a touch of flair. After greeting her, Leo and Alex started their warm-ups. Alex, who had been neglecting his workouts, struggled to touch his toes. "A student of yours dropped off a big box of that chicken cake yesterday," Professor Reed said to Leo. "It was delicious. We were in the faculty lounge, and the other professors smelled it. It was gone in minutes. A few even asked where they could buy it. I just made some for fun in the afternoon, Leo said. I'm not selling it right now. I can barely make enough for myself. Oh, by the way, Professor, my family sent me some old tea from back home. We call it tea grandmother. It's good for cooling the body and acts as a diuretic. It's basically a mild herbal medicine, safe for daily use. I'll bring you a bag tomorrow. All right, I've been feeling a bit run down lately. I'll give it a try, she said, swinging her arms in wide, powerful arcs. Alex looked at her, envious. She was healthier than he was, and he was a third of her age. He wasn't sure he could take her in a fight. After warming up, Leo said goodbye to the professor and went to get Moose for their run. Leo had a laugh at Alex's epiphany. He thought being busy was a substitute for exercise, a way to lose weight. It wasn't. The stress of modern work, the constant mental strain, actually contributed to weight gain. No matter how exhausted you felt, your body was slowly getting softer. Busyness was not a workout. Housework wasn't either. It was tiring, endless, and joyless. Real exercise, on the other hand, boosted your metabolism and released dopamine. It made you feel better. Alex just needed a good, hard run. Once he got that, his problems would solve themselves. Alex envied Leo's natural focus and freedom. Leo envied Alex's clear sense of purpose and the drive to act on it. Leo knew he could never be like Alex, leading and organizing such a massive undertaking. He preferred to minimize his social interactions and focus on small, manageable tasks within his comfort zone. That was the beauty of college. It gave you 4 years to figure yourself out, to find a way of life that suited you, to make peace with who you are and how you fit into the world. Sean was locked in a battle with his editing software. Jordan was happily immersed in his own hobbies. Leo helped Alex up, and they walked a slow lap to cool down. Moose, who was now used to his daily runs, trotted alongside them, his coat looking sleeker than ever. Alex, now that his minty cologne had evaporated in a cloud of sweat, was no longer offensive to the dog's sensitive nose. He reached down to pet him, and Moose, for Leo's sake, allowed it. The dog could tell this human was a friend of his boy. Alex was enjoying petting the big, fluffy dog until he noticed something. Moose's fur was thick and luxurious everywhere except for a small patch on the top of his head, where the hair was short and sparse. It was almost a bald spot. Alex slowly withdrew his hand and took a step back. Baldness was contagious. He was already worried about his own hairline. The last thing he needed was to catch it from a dog. The political world was full of bald men. Moose looked up confused. The human had been so friendly, and then suddenly so cold. Humans were so moody. Was he in heat? The 3 roommates went to get breakfast. Because Jordan had requested a breakfast bowl, they went to the usual spot. Leo noticed a change. Before, the owner was friendly in a starstruck way. The owner's wife would tease him, calling him a big star or pretty boy, and give him extra liver. But when Alex walked up, she practically sprinted over. The owner, who usually stayed out of sight, stubbed out his cigarette and rushed to serve them. In this tiny corner of campus, Leo felt the palpable weight of power. The owner wasn't lazy. He did all the prep work, probably getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning so his wife could open the stall at 6. Leo had been eating here for years and had always pictured the owner's wife as a permanent fixture behind the counter, a glamorous Helen of Troy of breakfast bowls. This was the first time he'd seen her walk. Her legs, he now saw, were not long and slender as he had imagined. They were sturdy. His 4-year-long fantasy shattered. Go back, go back, he screamed internally. Don't come over here. The taste of power had knocked his goddess off her pedestal. Alex's influence, once confined to student government, had now spread to the local culinary scene. He was the organizer of the food festival, a de facto leader. It suddenly made sense why Alex had been eating out so much lately. Power was the ultimate seasoning. To his credit, Alex wasn't letting it go to his head. When the owner's wife insisted the food was on the house, a treat for the leader, Alex politely refused and paid for everything. We don't take a needle or a thread from the people. Alex treated them to breakfast. They got a bowl without liver for Jordan and headed back to the dorm. Once there, Leo changed and prepared to head to class to study, grabbing 2 chicken cakes for the road. Sean stayed behind to work on a test live stream for that evening's food festival. Jordan woke up to eat his breakfast bowl. If it wasn't best eaten hot, he would have slept longer. Alex cleaned himself up, changed, and went out to oversee the final preparations. There wasn't much left to do but be present in case of emergencies and meet with any visiting dignitaries. His student government office, which he had fought for himself, was a spacious 1-bedroom suite, bigger than the university president's office. On his way, he sent the picture Leo had taken of him in his suit to his family. Then he called his mother, Director Yang. He usually reported to his father, the deputy mayor, through her. He told her about his morning run with Leo and his philosophical insights. Director Yang thought, "My son can still be so naive sometimes. He's still just a boy in his early 20s. But she said, "That's wonderful, dear. You're right. You should exercise more. A strong body leads to a resolute spirit. Your roommates seem like good people. You can learn a lot from each other. And don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're already doing an amazing job. Your father and I are so proud of you." Alex's serious expression softened, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. He told his parents to take care of themselves and hung up. Leo, on his way to class, didn't call his parents. At this hour, his mom might be taking her second nap of the morning. Calling her would likely result in a scolding. After a study session, Leo's brain felt like over-soaked instant noodles, swollen, soft, and a little mushy. He gave the 2 chicken cakes to his NPC study buddies, completing his daily quest. In return, he received a cup of unsweetened yogurt. He'd mentioned yesterday that their usual offering was a bit too sweet, and they had adjusted. It was nice having a mouth to voice one's needs. He headed to his next checkpoint. Prince Fahd had invited him to the stables again, but Leo had declined. If you were always available at a moment's notice, people started to take your time for granted. He told his assistant, Lou, to make arrangements for them if they wanted a ride, but he wouldn't be joining them. A strategic refusal could actually strengthen a relationship. Besides, he really was busy. The food festival was today, and Sean was doing a test livestream. Tomorrow was the concert, which had a rehearsal today. Alex had told him that first-class plane tickets from D.C. in New York were going for over $8,000. Normally, you could get them for under $1,000. Last night, his godfather had told him Governor Chandler's surgery had been a success. After Leo had given the governor his massage, his secretary, Mr. Zhang, had walked him out and added him on WhatsApp, telling him to reach out if he ever needed anything. Leo had mentioned the various foreign dignitaries who had been contacting him, wondering if the relevant authorities should be aware. He suggested they were probably interested in his herbal formula. Mr. Zhang had likely assumed the formula came for Dr. Shun, not a college kid, and that if foreigners were this interested, it must be important. Of course, the governor's health was the top priority, but a good secretary covers all the bases. Leo had only mentioned it in passing, a casual report, but it had clearly been effective. That very day, the Japanese representative, Fujiwara Nanichi, had tried to book a flight home and found the system was mysteriously malfunctioning. He couldn't get a ticket. He didn't trust the local labs to analyze the tiny sample he'd collected from under his fingernail and wanted to take it back to Japan. But now he was stuck, and he worried the sample would degrade. Prince Fahd, on the other hand, was unbothered. He couldn't ride Monarch, but the other horses were excellent too. He might not raise animals himself, but he certainly played with them enough to know a well-cared-for horse when he saw one. He didn't feel entitled to special treatment just because he'd given Mr. Foster a Ferrari. He'd seen the videos. Mr. Foster had several supercars and booked out entire racetracks for himself. The man was clearly from a powerful family, just like him. He understood that a busy student couldn't always be available. Mr. Brownell and Fujiwara wanted to complain, but since the hot-tempered prince was fine with it, they kept their mouths shut. Fujiwara didn't even mention his ticketing problem. He just kept smiling and playing along. Back on campus, Leo left the classroom and headed to the library. The paths were crowded with students from other universities who had come for the food festival. Security had been beefed up, and even professors who didn't have classes were roped into duty, stationed at various points around campus to keep things orderly. The younger faculty were posted outside, while the older ones held down the forts in their offices. Even Professor Hoffman had been called in. Leo noticed more people taking pictures of him, but on campus, the atmosphere was respectful. No one crowded him or caused a scene. The weather was perfect, sunny, and not too cold, and the campus was vibrant with the energy of youth. People took photos, but no one approached him. Maybe it was his aloof aura, or maybe it was just university etiquette. He reached the library and was immediately enveloped by the quiet calm of the books. It was warm and peaceful inside, and every desk was occupied by students studying. He walked along the shelves with no particular goal. The afternoon was packed. Their restaurant had a booth at the food festival, and they needed to prepare some easy-to-carry items like pastries or drinks. It was a great promotional opportunity. Then there was the long concert rehearsal and a test live stream in the evening. This time the library was a stolen moment of peace, but a necessary one. It might seem like a waste of time in the short term, but in the long run, these were the moments that mattered. He found a book called The Good Taste of Texas and Louisiana. It was a lively and engaging read, especially its descriptions of spicy food. It explained that the historic dampness of the region, where the sun was a rare sight, made the chili pepper, once dismissed as a barbaric flavor in the Northeast, a godsend. The combination of chili, peppercorn, and ginger was the dehumidifying trio, opening up the pores and making you sweat. It quoted a local chef as saying, "You come to my restaurant and order the mild version? Get out." Leo stood there reading for a long time, fascinated. It explained that the local diet was a result of the environment. Many people who moved away stopped eating such spicy food. The book even mentioned a local dating rule. Can't handle the heat? Don't even think about it. It described a dish of deep-fried jalapenos that was surprisingly friendly to outsiders, spicy, sweet, and addictive like a snack. It also detailed the various ways to eat rabbit: the head, the offal, diced and fried. In this region, rabbits weren't just cute, they were delicious. He was lost in a world of rabbit, spice, and barbecue. By the time he finished the chapter, he was starving. Sometimes a bad mood could be cured by a single spicy meal. If one didn't work, two usually did. He took a few pictures of the book and sent them to Dr. Croft. She replied, "Get lost." She was at the beach, and the food was bland enough to make a bird cry. The chili sauce on the island was sweet. After the book on chili peppers, Leo found a book on hemorrhoids to balance things out. The saying went that 9 out of 10 men had them, and he wasn't sure he was the lucky one. It was always good to arm oneself with knowledge for the ailments of old age.